When Michael Jordan opened his front door on an ordinary afternoon, he saw something impossible. Standing on his doorstep was a man he thought had been dead for 40 years. His childhood best friend, the boy who taught him how to shoot a basketball, the friend he had searched for and mourned since 1975. Michael's hands started shaking. His face went pale. And then he did something that shocked everyone who saw it. But here's the crazy part. This wasn't just any reunion. This man had been alive the whole time. Lost, confused, living with a secret that would break your heart. And when the truth finally came out, it changed everything Michael thought he knew about friendship, loss, and the 40 years he spent becoming the greatest basketball player in history. What happened next would lead to tears, anger, and a revelation so shocking that it made national news. A story about two boys who carved a promise into a tree. A promise that somehow survived tragedy, amnesia, and 4 decades of separation. You need to watch this entire video to understand how a knock on the door led to one of the most emotional moments in sports history. Because what Michael Jordan did after learning the truth, that's the part that will leave you speechless. This is the true story of Michael Jordan and Marcus Webb. And trust me, you won't believe where it goes. It all started in the summer of 1971, in a quiet neighborhood in Wilmington, North Carolina. Michael Jordan stood in his study, the afternoon sun casting golden light across the dark wood floors. His 8-year-old grandson, Jamie, sat cross-legged on the Persian rug, carefully sorting through a stack of vintage basketball cards. "Grandpa, is this really you?" Jamie held up a 1986 Fleer rookie card, his eyes wide with wonder. Michael smiled, settling into the leather chair beside him. "That's me, long time ago." "You look so young," Jamie giggled, "and your shorts are really short." Before Michael could respond, a sound echoed through the massive hallway, a knock at the front door. Michael's brow furrowed. Visitors didn't just knock at his door. The estate had security gates, cameras, and guards. Anyone coming through had to be cleared first. His assistant, Patricia, appeared in the doorway. Her face looked puzzled, almost concerned. "Mr. Jordan, there's a man at the door." "Did security clear him?" "Yes, but he won't give his name. He says you'll remember him. He seems sincere, harmless, but he insists on seeing you personally." Michael felt a flicker of annoyance. Fans occasionally found ways through security, claiming old connections. "Tell him to leave his contact information. He said to tell you it's about a basketball, an old one, with a signature." Michael's heart skipped. His hand instinctively moved to his chest. Very few people knew about that basketball, almost no one. "I'll handle this," Michael said quietly. He stood, his 6'6" frame unfolding from the chair. "Jamie, stay here with Patricia." "But Grandpa." "Stay here, buddy. I'll be right back." Michael walked through the hallway, his footsteps echoing on the marble. His mind raced. The basketball, who could possibly know about it? It sat in a glass case in his private collection, a worn Spalding with a faded Walt Frazier signature. He'd never mentioned it in interviews. Only his closest family members knew its significance. He reached the front door and paused, his hand on the handle. Through the frosted glass, he could see a thin silhouette. Taking a breath, Michael opened the door. The man standing on his doorstep was in his early 60s, maybe a few years older than Michael. He was thin, too thin, with weathered brown skin and silver threading through his short hair. He wore simple clothes, khaki pants, a pressed button-down shirt, clean but inexpensive sneakers. But it was his eyes that stopped Michael cold. Those eyes, kind, deep, familiar in a way that made Michael's chest tight. The man's face broke into a slow, hesitant smile. A smile Michael had seen 1,000,000 times in his dreams. "Michael," the voice was soft, uncertain. Michael's mouth went dry, his hands began to shake. The word came out as barely a whisper. "Marcus." Man nodded, his own eyes filling with tears. Michael's world tilted, his vision blurred. This wasn't possible, this couldn't be happening. Marcus Webb had died 40 years ago in Chicago, everyone said so. The car accident, the reports, the grief that had haunted Michael's entire career, but here he stood, older, weathered by time and life, but unmistakably, impossibly Marcus. I thought." Michael couldn't finish the sentence. His throat closed around the words. "I know," Marcus said gently. "I know what they said, I know what everyone thought. But Michael, I'm here, I'm real, I'm alive." Michael stepped forward, his athlete's body moving on instinct rather than thought. He pulled Marcus into a fierce hug, holding him tight as if he might vanish like smoke. Marcus hugged him back just as fiercely, and Michael felt his friend's shoulders shake with silent sobs. They stood like that for a long moment, two old men holding onto each other on a North Carolina doorstep, 40 years of grief and questions and impossible hope passing between them. Finally, Michael stepped back, his hands gripping Marcus's shoulders. He studied his face, the lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair, the scar above his left eyebrow that Michael didn't remember. He looked into those familiar eyes, searching for proof that this was real. "How?" Michael's voice cracked. "How are you here? Where have you been? I looked for you. For years I looked for you. They said you were dead, Marcus, dead." Marcus's smile turned sad and he wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Michael, but I'm here now and I remember everything. Can we talk, please? I know this is crazy. I know you probably think I'm insane, but—" "Come in," Michael said immediately, stepping aside. "Come in, we have a lot to talk about." Marcus nodded and stepped through the doorway, crossing the threshold between past and present, between loss and impossible reunion. Michael closed the door behind him, his heart pounding like it did in the final seconds of a championship game. The game, however, was just beginning. Michael led Marcus through the hallway, past walls decorated with championship banners and framed photographs. Marcus's eyes traveled over everything, taking it all in with quiet wonder. When they passed a life-sized photo of Michael dunking in his Bulls uniform, Marcus stopped. "You really did it," he whispered. "Everything we talked about." Michael's jaw tightened. "We were supposed to do it together." They entered the study where Jamie still sat with Patricia. The boy looked up curiously at the stranger. Patricia's eyes questioned Michael silently, but he gave her a small nod. "Patricia, can you take Jamie to get some ice cream? We'll be a while." "Sure, Mr. Jordan." She took Jamie's hand and the boy protested only slightly before being led away. When they were alone, Michael gestured to the leather couch. Marcus sat, his hands clasped between his knees. Michael couldn't sit. Energy coursed through him, questions, emotions, memories, all fighting for space in his mind. "I need to understand," Michael said. "Start from the beginning. How are you alive?" "Can I tell you a different story first?" Marcus asked. "Before I explain everything else, can I tell you about how we met? I need to know. I need to know if you remember it the same way I do." Michael finally sat, leaning forward. "I remember everything, Marcus, everything." Wilmington, North Carolina, summer 1971. 10-year-old Michael Jordan sat on his front steps, bouncing a basketball between his feet. The rubber ball was old, the grip worn smooth, but it was his most prized possession. Down the street, kids played baseball. In the park, others flew kites. But Michael had eyes only for the orange sphere. "You're doing it wrong." Michael looked up. A boy stood at the edge of his yard, the new kid from next door. Marcus Webb had moved in 2 weeks ago, and Michael had watched from his window as the moving truck unloaded furniture that looked even older than his family's hand-me-downs. "I'm not doing it wrong," Michael said defensively. "I'm just practicing." "Practicing wrong is worse than not practicing at all." Marcus walked closer. He was slightly taller than Michael, with a lean build and eyes that seemed older than 10 years should allow. "You're bouncing it like you're scared of it." "I'm not scared of a basketball." "Then prove it, one-on-one, my driveway." Michael hesitated. His older brother Larry was the basketball player in the family. Larry made every shot, won every game, earned all the praise. Michael was just the little brother who tried too hard and failed too often. But something in Marcus's expression, a challenge but not a mean one, made Michael nod. Marcus's driveway was cracked concrete with a rusty hoop attached to the garage. The net was torn, hanging by a few threads, but to Michael, it might as well have been Madison Square Garden. "Go first," Marcus said, tossing him the ball. Michael dribbled awkwardly, then shot. The ball clanged off the rim. He felt his face burn with embarrassment. Marcus retrieved the ball, then did something Michael didn't expect. Instead of shooting, he walked over and adjusted Michael's hands on the basketball. "Feel the grooves, your fingers go here like this. The ball should rest on your fingertips, not your palms. And when you shoot," Marcus demonstrated in slow motion, "it's all in the follow-through. You're stopping too soon, like you don't believe it's going in." "It's not going in anyway," Michael muttered. "Not with that attitude," Marcus grinned. "Try again, but this time see the ball going through the net before you even shoot, Close your eyes if you have to. Michael thought that was the stupidest advice he'd ever heard, but he tried it anyway. He closed his eyes, pictured the ball swishing through the net, then opened them and shot. Swish. Michael's mouth dropped open. Marcus laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. See, it's all up here first. Marcus tapped his temple. The basket is just a detail. They played until the sun started setting. Marcus won every game, but he never made Michael feel bad about it. Instead, he taught. He showed Michael how to pivot, how to protect the ball, how to read a defender's feet instead of their hands. "Why are you helping me?" Michael asked as they sat on the driveway, both breathing hard, shirts soaked with sweat. Marcus shrugged. "My dad's a mechanic. We move a lot chasing work. I've been to 6 schools in 3 years. Never had a real friend, you know. Just kids I played with for a while before we moved again." He looked at Michael. "But you're different. You actually want to get better. Most kids just want to win. You want to learn." "I want to be like my brother," Michael admitted. "Larry's good at everything. Everyone loves him." "Forget about Larry," Marcus said firmly. "Be better than Larry, be better than everyone." Michael laughed. "That's impossible. Not if you work harder than everyone. Not if you practice when they're sleeping. Not if you turn every loss into fuel." Marcus's eyes burned with intensity. "You've got something, Michael. I can see it. You just don't see it yet." Nobody had ever talked to Michael like that. Nobody had ever looked at him and seen potential instead of Larry's little brother. "Want to practice tomorrow?" Michael asked hopefully. "Every day," Marcus said. "We'll practice every single day until we're both good enough for the NBA." Michael laughed again. "The NBA, come on." Marcus didn't laugh. "I'm serious. We make a pact right now. We both make it to the NBA. We become the best together." "That's crazy." "Is it?" Marcus stood, pulling Michael up with him. "Come on, let's make it official." They walked to the oak tree in Marcus's backyard, its branches spreading wide enough to shade both their houses. Marcus pulled out a pocket knife. "We carve it into the tree, then it's real. Then we have to do it." Marcus carefully carved the words into the bark. "Brothers forever. NBA dreams together." "There," Marcus said, stepping back. "Now we're locked in, no backing out." Michael traced the letters with his finger. It was crazy. It was impossible. But looking at those words standing next to this boy who believed in him when nobody else did, Michael felt something shift inside his chest. Maybe it wasn't impossible. Maybe with Marcus beside him, anything was possible. "Brothers forever," Michael repeated. "NBA dreams together," Marcus finished. They shook hands, and in that moment under that oak tree, 2 10-year-old boys made a promise that would echo through the decades to come. Back in the present, Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. "Do you remember?" Michael's face was wet with tears he didn't remember shedding. "Every word, every moment. That was the day my life changed, Marcus. That was the day I started believing." "Mine too," Marcus whispered. "You were my first real friend, my only real friend." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 40 lost years pressing down on them both. "Now tell me," Michael said quietly. "Tell me what happened. Tell me where you've been." Marcus took a deep breath. "It's a long story, and it doesn't have a happy middle, but it has this ending, and that's something." Michael leaned back, preparing himself. "I'm listening." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at Michael's pristine basketball court. His reflection in the glass looked ghostly, translucent. "Before I tell you what happened after," Marcus said softly, "I need to remember what happened before. That last summer. Do you remember that last game we played?" Michael closed his eyes. "July 1972. I remember. Wilmington, North Carolina, July 1972. The summer had been perfect until it wasn't. 11-year-old Michael and Marcus had spent every single day on the basketball court. Marcus's driveway had become their sacred space, their training ground, their cathedral. The crack in the concrete that made the ball bounce funny was no longer a problem. They'd learned to use it as an advantage. The loose rim that tilted slightly left had taught them precision. Michael had grown 2 inches. Marcus had gotten faster. Together, they'd become a unit, reading each other's moves like a secret language only they spoke. Michael's brother Larry had stopped teasing him about basketball. Their father had started watching them play, arms crossed, nodding with approval. Even their mother had commented that Michael was really improving. But Marcus had been quiet all week. It was July 15th, a Friday. The humidity hung in the air like a wet blanket, but Michael and Marcus were on the court anyway, playing one-on-one under the streetlight because the sun had already set. They'd been playing for 3 hours. Michael drove left, spun right, and went up for a layup. Marcus blocked it cleanly, then grabbed the rebound. "Your spin is getting predictable," Marcus said, but his voice lacked its usual energy. "What's wrong with you?" Michael asked, hands on his knees, breathing hard. "You've been weird all week." Marcus dribbled the ball slowly, not looking at Michael. The sound echoed in the quiet street, thump, thump, thump. "My dad got a job," Marcus finally said. Michael felt something cold settle in his stomach. "That's good, right? Your dad's been looking for." "It's in Chicago." The words hung in the humid air like a curse. "Chicago," Michael repeated stupidly. That's far." "Real far." Marcus still wouldn't meet his eyes. "He says it's a good job, permanent. He starts Monday." "Monday? That's in 3 days." "We leave tomorrow. Saturday morning, the truck's coming at 8. Michael felt the world tilt beneath his feet. This couldn't be happening. They had plans. They had their pact carved into the oak tree. They were going to make the NBA together. "You can't leave," Michael said, his voice cracking. "We're a team. We're brothers." "I don't have a choice." Marcus's voice was rough, like he was fighting tears. "My dad needs this job. My mom says we might finally be able to stop moving around if this works out. This could be good for my family." "What about us?" Marcus finally looked up, and Michael saw tears streaming down his face. "That's why I've been quiet. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want it to be real." They stood there in the yellow streetlight, 2 11-year-old boys facing the reality that the world was bigger and crueler than their driveway, their oak tree, their carved promises. "We'll write letters," Michael said desperately, "every week, and you can visit in the summer, and when we're old enough, we'll—" "Yeah," Marcus cut him off, wiping his face with his shirt. "Yeah, all of that. This isn't goodbye forever, Michael. It's just different." But they both knew it felt like forever. "Let's play," Marcus said, his voice steadier now. "One more game. Let's make it count." They played until 2 in the morning. It was the best game of basketball either of them had ever played. Every move was sharp, every shot meaningful. They pushed each other, challenged each other, reminded each other of everything they'd learned together. Marcus's fadeaway jumper was poetry. He rose up, leaning back at an impossible angle, the ball arcing perfectly through the humid night air. Swish, again and again. Michael tried to copy it. His form was close but not quite right. He leaned back but lost his balance. He got the arc but missed the target. "You're thinking too much," Marcus said, demonstrating again. "Feel it here first." He tapped Michael's chest, right over his heart. "The basket is just a detail. You already know how to make the shot. Your body knows, trust it." Michael tried again. This time he closed his eyes for just a second, felt the movement in his chest, in his core, in his bones. When he opened his eyes and shot, the ball barely touched the rim as it went through. "There," Marcus shouted. "That's it, that's the one." They kept playing. The score didn't matter. The winner didn't matter. All that mattered was this moment, this night, this last game under the streetlight that had witnessed their entire friendship. Finally, exhausted and emotionally drained, they collapsed on the driveway, lying on their backs, staring up at the stars barely visible through the humidity and light pollution. "When you make it to the NBA," Marcus said quietly, "and you will, Michael, I know you will, promise me you'll remember this. Remember us." "When we both make it," Michael corrected stubbornly. Marcus didn't argue. "Yeah, when we both make it." They lay there in silence for a while. Then Marcus sat up abruptly. "Wait here, don't move." He ran into his house and came back carrying something wrapped in an old pillowcase. He sat down beside Michael and carefully unwrapped it. Michael's breath caught. It was Marcus's basketball, his most prized possession, the one signed by Walt Frazier, his hero. Marcus had won it in a raffle at a Knicks game 2 years ago, back when his family had briefly lived in New York. He'd never let anyone else touch it. "I can't take that," Michael protested. "That's yours. That's your favorite thing." "Exactly," Marcus said, pressing it into Michael's hands. "That's why you have to keep it. When I come back, when we see each other again, you can give it back to me. But until then, you keep it safe. And every time you look at it, remember what I told you." "What did you tell me?" Marcus's eyes were serious, intense in a way that made him seem much older than 11. That you're going to be great, that you have something special, that the basket is just a detail, the real game is in here. He tapped Michael's chest again. Keep practicing that fadeaway, and when you make it big, don't forget the little guy who showed you how. Michael clutched the basketball to his chest. I'll never forget, I promise. I know, Marcus smiled, but it was sad around the edges. That's why I'm giving it to you. They sat together until the streetlight flickered off at its automatic timer, 3 a.m. Then Marcus stood, pulling Michael up with him. I should go. My mom's probably freaking out. Marcus, wait. Michael didn't know what to say. How do you say goodbye to the person who changed your life? How do you put into words what someone means when they're the only one who ever really saw you? Don't say goodbye, Marcus said, as if reading his mind. Say, see you later. That's what brothers do. Michael nodded, not trusting his voice. They hugged, a fierce, desperate hug that tried to compress all their friendship into one moment. See you later, Michael Jordan, future NBA superstar. See you later, Marcus Webb, future NBA champion. Marcus jogged across the yard to his house. At the door, he turned back one last time and raised his hand in a wave. Michael waved back, clutching the Walt Frazier basketball. Then Marcus went inside and Michael stood alone in his driveway, feeling like something essential had been ripped from his chest. In the present, Michael's voice was barely a whisper. I stood there for an hour after you went inside. I couldn't make myself go home. I kept thinking if I stayed there, morning wouldn't come. The truck wouldn't come, you wouldn't leave. Marcus turned from the window, his face wet with tears. I watched you from my bedroom window. I saw you standing there. I almost came back out a dozen times. Why didn't you? Because I knew if I did, I'd never be able to leave, and my family needed me to be strong. Marcus's voice broke. I needed to be strong. You were 11 years old, Michael said fiercely. You were a child. You shouldn't have had to be strong. Neither should you, but we were. Marcus sat back down on the couch. The next morning, when the truck came, I looked for you. I wanted one more goodbye, but you weren't there. Michael nodded slowly. I couldn't watch you leave. I sat under the oak tree in your backyard, looking at our carved promise. I stayed there until I heard the truck drive away. They sat in heavy silence, the weight of that July morning 40 years ago pressing down on them both. I tried to write you, Michael said. Did you know that? Every week for months, every letter came back. Marcus's face crumpled. I never got a single one. I never knew you tried. What happened, Marcus? Michael's voice was gentle but insistent. Tell me what happened in Chicago. Tell me how we lost 40 years. Marcus took a shuddering breath. The job my dad got, it lasted 6 weeks. And he began to tell the story that would explain everything and break both their hearts all over again. Chicago, Illinois, August 1972. The Webb family's apartment in Chicago was smaller than any place they'd lived before. Marcus could stand in the middle of the living room and touch both walls with his arms stretched wide. His bedroom was barely big enough for a mattress on the floor, but his father had promised this was temporary. The job was good. They'd save money. Soon, they'd get a bigger place. Marcus tried to believe him. He'd been in Chicago for 3 weeks and everything felt wrong. The city was too loud, too crowded, too fast. Kids on the neighborhood court played basketball differently, more aggressive, more physical, less about the joy of the game. When Marcus tried to join, they laughed at his country style. He missed Wilmington. He missed the quiet streets. He missed the crack in his driveway. He missed Michael. Every night, Marcus wrote letters to the address in Wilmington. He poured his heart onto notebook paper, describing Chicago, asking about Michael's summer, reminding him about their pact. He mailed them at the post office, watching them disappear into the mail slot with hope. No responses came. Marcus told himself Michael was busy. Summer activities, family trips, basketball camp. He'd write back eventually, but doubt crept in. Maybe Michael had forgotten him already. Maybe their friendship hadn't meant as much as Marcus thought. Maybe he was just another kid Michael had played basketball with once upon a time. On September 12th, Marcus's father came home early from work. Marcus knew immediately something was wrong. His father's shoulders were slumped, his eyes hollow. They're laying people off, his father said quietly to Marcus's mother. I'm out. They kept the guys with seniority. I'm too new. 6 weeks. The permanent job had lasted 6 weeks, Marcus's mother cried. His father punched the wall, leaving a dent in the cheap plaster. Marcus sat on his mattress, clutching the notebook where he'd been writing another letter to Michael, and felt his world crumble. They moved 2 weeks later, a cheaper apartment on the south side. Then another apartment 2 months after that. Then another. Each place was worse than the last. Marcus changed schools 3 times in 4 months. His father took whatever work he could find: construction, warehouse jobs, night shifts that left him exhausted and angry. The letters to Michael stopped. Marcus didn't have a stable address anymore. And honestly, after 6 months of silence, Marcus assumed Michael had moved on. The basketball went into a box. Marcus couldn't bear to touch it anymore. It reminded him of everything he'd lost. Chicago, Illinois, March 15, 1975. Saturday night. Marcus's father had picked up a rare evening shift at a construction site. The pay was double for weekend work, and they desperately needed the money. Marcus's mother decided to bring him dinner, their family's old station wagon barely running, burning oil but still limping along. "Come with me," his mother said to 14-year-old Marcus. "Your father will be happy to see you." Marcus almost said no. He had homework. He was tired. The car smelled like burning rubber, and his father would probably be too busy to talk anyway. But his mother looked so hopeful, so desperate for a moment of family normalcy, that Marcus grabbed his jacket. "Okay, let's go." They drove through Chicago's South Side as the sun set. His mother talked about maybe moving back to North Carolina. Maybe things would be better there. Maybe they could start over. Marcus barely listened. He was thinking about basketball, about a fadeaway jumper he'd seen on TV, about a boy in Wilmington he used to know. His mother ran a red light. She didn't mean to. The brake lights on the car in front of them were broken. She thought she had time. She thought the intersection was clear. The truck came from the left side. Marcus saw it a split second before impact. A massive delivery truck, horn blaring, headlights impossibly bright. He opened his mouth to scream. Then the world exploded. Metal crunched, glass shattered. His mother's scream cut off abruptly. Marcus felt himself flying, his seatbelt snapping, the door beside him tearing open. He tumbled through space, bounced off something hard, and hit the pavement. Pain erupted everywhere. He tried to breathe but couldn't. He tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. He heard sirens, voices, someone screaming, "Call an ambulance." He tried to call for his mother, but no sound came out. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the Chicago night sky, stars invisible behind the city lights. The last thing he thought was, "I never finished my letter to Michael." Then nothing. Present day. Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless, the only way he could tell the story without breaking completely. "I was in a coma for 7 months. When I woke up, I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know anything." Michael sat frozen, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair so tightly his knuckles had turned white. "My mother died on impact," Marcus continued. "My father," they called him from the construction site. "He came to the hospital. He was there for 3 days, sitting beside my bed while I was unconscious. Then on the 4th day, he was driving back to the hospital and—" Marcus swallowed hard. "Another accident, a drunk driver. He died instantly." "Marcus," Michael's voice broke, "I lost both my parents in the same week, but I didn't know that. I didn't know anything. For 7 months, I was just gone." Marcus stood and walked to the window again, as if he couldn't sit still with these memories. "When I woke up, the doctors said it was a miracle. The head trauma had been severe. They'd expected brain damage, paralysis, maybe a vegetative state. But I opened my eyes. I could move. I could speak." "But you didn't remember?" "Nothing, not my name, not my parents, not where I lived, not basketball, not Wilmington." Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. "Not you." Michael stood and walked to Marcus, placing a hand on his shoulder. Marcus leaned into the touch like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. "The foster care system took me," Marcus said. "I was 14 years old with no memory and no family. They called me John Doe for 3 weeks while they tried to identify me. Eventually, they found records. My parents' bodies had been identified through their driver's licenses. They matched me to them through my father's workplace records." "So you knew your name was Marcus Webb?" "I knew facts. I was told facts. Marcus Webb, born in Wilmington, North Carolina. Parents, David and Ruth Webb. But the information meant nothing. They were just words. I couldn't remember their faces. I couldn't remember loving them. Marcus turned to face Michael, tears streaming freely now. Do you know what that's like? To be told you had parents, that they loved you, that they died trying to help you, and to feel nothing. To look at their pictures and see strangers. Michael pulled him into a hug. Marcus sobbed against his shoulder, 40 years of grief finally finding release. The system moved me around, Marcus said when he could speak again. Foster homes, group homes, each place I went I was a different person on paper. Marcus Webb became Marcus White in one home when the paperwork got mixed up. Then Marcus Washington in another. The system was overwhelmed. Records were lost, files misfiled. I fell through the cracks. Didn't anyone try to find your history, your past? A social worker tried. She called Wilmington, asked if anyone knew the Webb family. But we'd moved so much before Chicago, we were barely there 2 years, and my parents kept to themselves. They didn't have friends, didn't go to church, didn't join community groups. We were always planning to move again, so why put down roots? Marcus pulled back, wiping his face. The social worker found nothing. No extended family, no friends, no connections. It was like we'd never existed. Michael thought about those months after Marcus left, how he'd asked everyone about the Webb family, how no one seemed to remember them clearly. They'd been the quiet neighbors who kept to themselves, always one paycheck away from moving again. What about the letters I sent? Michael asked. Your letters went to our old Chicago address. We'd moved 3 times by then. The post office probably returned them all as undeliverable. Marcus's expression was anguished. You were trying to reach me, and I was lying in a hospital bed, trapped in my own broken mind. They sat back down, the weight of lost time crushing them both. How did you survive? Michael asked quietly. 14 years old, no memory, no family. How did you make it? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know. Some days I didn't want to. Some days I thought it would be easier to just give up. But something inside me wouldn't let me quit. Something kept pushing me forward even when I didn't understand why. That's who you've always been, Michael said. Even when you couldn't remember yourself, your strength was still there. Maybe. Marcus looked exhausted, reliving these memories clearly taking a toll. I spent my teenage years bouncing around Chicago's foster system. I graduated high school somehow, got a GED, started working construction like my father had, saved money, tried to build a life. Did the memories ever come back? Fragments, dreams mostly. A basketball court lit by streetlights, the sound of a ball bouncing on concrete, a feeling of brotherhood, of connection, but never clear enough to understand. I'd wake up with tears on my face and not know why. Michael's heart ached. While he'd been rising to basketball stardom, carrying Marcus's memory as motivation, Marcus had been lost in Chicago with only ghost memories that made no sense. I turned 30 before I realized those dreams might be real memories, Marcus said. I started asking questions, digging into my past, but all I found were dead ends. The car accident, my parents' deaths, the gaps in my records, it was all documented, but none of it brought my memories back. When did you stop looking? I never did, not completely, but I accepted that maybe I'd never know who I was before the accident, so I focused on who I could be after it. Marcus managed a small smile. I met Sarah when I was 32. She was a waitress at a diner where I ate breakfast every morning before work. She had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. She didn't care that I couldn't remember my childhood. She loved who I was, not who I'd been. Did you tell her about the dreams? Eventually, she said they mattered even if I couldn't understand them. She said memories want to be found. Michael smiled despite his tears. She sounds wonderful. She is. We got married, had 2 kids. I became a foreman on construction sites. We bought a small house. Nothing fancy, nothing like this. He gestured at Michael's mansion, but it was ours. I built a good life, Michael. Not the life we planned, but a good one. I'm glad, Michael said, and he meant it. Despite everything, despite the tragedy and loss, Marcus had found happiness. That meant something. But I never stopped wondering, Marcus admitted. Never stopped dreaming about that streetlight, that basketball court, that feeling of belonging to someone. You belong to me, Michael whispered. You always did. I know that now. Marcus's eyes held 40 years of pain and regret. But for so long, I didn't. For so long, I was just a man with holes in his heart that I couldn't explain. They sat in silence, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows, two old friends bound by tragedy and separated by time, finally together again but forever changed by what they'd lost. "How did you find me?" Michael finally asked. "How did the memories come back?" Marcus's expression shifted, a hint of wonder breaking through the grief. "That's a story too, and it starts with your fadeaway jumper." Michael leaned forward. "Tell me." "Not yet," Marcus said gently. "First, I need to understand something. I need to know what happened to you after I left. I need to know how you became this." He gestured around the room at the evidence of Michael's legendary life. "I need to know if losing me hurt you the way I think it did." Michael's jaw tightened. "You want to know if I grieved for you? I want to know if I mattered." "Marcus, you changed the course of my entire life. Every single day since you left, you've been with me. Every shot, every game, every championship, you were there." Michael's voice was fierce. "So yes, you mattered. You've always mattered." "Then tell me," Marcus said softly. "Tell me your story. I've spent 40 years not knowing mine. Let me know yours." Wilmington, North Carolina, August 1972. After Marcus left, Michael stopped playing basketball. For 2 weeks, he couldn't even look at the court in Marcus's old driveway. The new family that moved in had a toddler who rode a tricycle in circles where Michael and Marcus used to play one-on-one. It felt like a desecration. Michael's mother noticed. His father noticed. Even Larry noticed. "Why aren't you playing anymore?" Larry asked one evening, tossing a football in the backyard. "Don't feel like it," Michael muttered. "Since when?" "You and that Marcus kid practically lived on the court." The mention of Marcus's name felt like a punch. "He's gone, so what's the point?" Larry studied his younger brother. "The point is you love basketball. Don't stop doing something you love just because someone left." But Michael did stop. For 2 weeks, the Walt Frazier basketball sat in the corner of his room untouched. Michael wrote letters to Marcus every day but never received responses. The silence felt like rejection. Then, on a Friday afternoon, Michael's father came into his room. "Get up," his father said. "We're going to the court." "I don't want to." "I didn't ask what you wanted. Get up." They drove to the community center where the outdoor courts were. Michael's father parked, then turned to face his son. "Your mother told me about your friend, about him moving away." Michael stared at his shoes. "Life's going to take people from you, son. That's just how it is. Friends move, people leave, but you know what doesn't leave? What you build inside yourself, the skills you develop, the person you become." His father's voice was firm but not unkind. "That boy taught you to love basketball. Are you going to dishonor that by quitting?" "He's not coming back," Michael whispered. "I know, but the game is still here and you're still here, so what are you going to do about it?" Michael looked at his father, then at the basketball courts through the windshield. Kids were playing, laughing, living. "I'm going to practice," Michael said quietly. "Good, then get out there." Michael grabbed the Walt Frazier basketball from the backseat. He'd brought it without realizing, his hands finding it automatically. He walked onto the court and started shooting. His form was terrible. His fadeaway, the one Marcus had taught him, wasn't working. He missed shot after shot, frustration building. But he didn't quit. He stayed until the sun set, until the court lights came on, until he was the only person left. He practiced Marcus's fadeaway over and over, hearing his friend's voice in his head. "Feel it in your chest first. The basket is just a detail." When Michael finally went home that night, his hands were blistered and his legs ached. But something had shifted inside him. He'd found a purpose. If Marcus couldn't be here, Michael would carry him. Every shot would be for both of them. Wilmington, North Carolina, fall 1975. 13-year-old Michael sat under the oak tree in what used to be Marcus's backyard. The new family had cut back the branches, but the carved message was still there, faded but readable. "Brothers forever. NBA dreams together." Michael traced the letters with his finger, tears running down his face. The rumor had reached Wilmington 3 days ago. Marcus Webb had died in a car accident in Chicago. The details were vague. Someone knew someone who knew someone. But the story was consistent enough that people believed it. Michael's mother had told him gently, holding his hands, watching him carefully. "I'm so sorry, baby. I know he was special to you." Michael had nodded, gone to his room, and closed the door. He'd stayed there for 2 days, clutching the Walt Frazier basketball, crying until he had no tears left. Now, sitting under the oak tree, Michael made a new promise. "I'll do it for both of us," he whispered to the carved words. "I'll make the NBA, I'll be the best, and every time I play, you'll be there with me. I promise, Marcus, I promise." The wind rustled the leaves above him, and for a moment, Michael could almost hear Marcus's voice. "You've got something, Michael. You just don't see it yet." "I see it now," Michael said to the empty backyard. "I see it." He stood, wiped his face, and walked home. The next day, he'd be back on the court, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of his life, because he wasn't just playing for himself anymore. He was playing for the boy who'd believed in him first. Wilmington, North Carolina, fall 1978. The day Michael got cut from his high school varsity basketball team, he thought about quitting forever. He stood in the hallway, staring at the roster posted on the bulletin board. His name wasn't there. His best friend Leary Smith had made it. Michael hadn't. The humiliation burned. The rejection felt like proof that he'd never been good enough, that Marcus had been wrong about him, that the dream carved into the oak tree was just childish fantasy. Michael drove home in silence, his mother sensing not to ask questions. He went straight to his room and sat on his bed, holding the Walt Frazier basketball. "You were wrong about me," he whispered to the ghost of his friend. "I'm not special. I'm not good enough." But even as he said the words, he heard Marcus's voice in his memory. "You've got something, Michael. You just don't see it yet. Don't give up. Turn every loss into fuel." Michael looked at the basketball, at the faded Walt Frazier signature, at the worn leather that had seen thousands of hours of practice. Then he stood up. If the coaches couldn't see his potential, he'd make it impossible to miss. If they thought he wasn't good enough, he'd become so good they'd have no choice but to recognize it. That night, Michael went to the community center and practiced until midnight. The next day, he did it again and again. Every single day, he pushed himself harder than the day before. He grew taller, shooting up inches seemingly overnight. He got stronger, faster, more skilled. But more than his physical growth, something harder crystallized inside him, a fierce, unrelenting determination that would never accept defeat. Getting cut hadn't broken him. It had forged him. By his junior year, Michael was the star of the varsity team. By his senior year, colleges across the country were recruiting him. The boy who wasn't good enough had become impossible to ignore. And through it all, Marcus's voice echoed, "Be better than everyone. Work harder than everyone. Turn every loss into fuel." University of North Carolina, March 29, 1982. Michael stood at the free throw line in the Louisiana Superdome, the NCAA championship on the line. North Carolina versus Georgetown. The score was tied. 17 seconds left. His heart pounded. His hands were slick with sweat. 70 million people were watching on television, but Michael only thought about one person who wasn't there. "This is for you, Marcus. This is for both of us." The ball came to Michael on the left wing. His defender closed in. Michael didn't hesitate. He rose up with the fadeaway jumper Marcus had taught him 10 years ago, the shot they'd practiced 1,000 times under the streetlight. The ball arced through the air. Swish. North Carolina won the championship. Michael's teammates mobbed him. The crowd exploded. Coach Dean Smith hugged him. It was the greatest moment of Michael's young life. But as the celebration swirled around him, Michael looked up at the rafters of the Superdome and whispered, "We did it, Marcus. We did it." In his dorm room that night, while his teammates partied, Michael sat alone with the Walt Frazier basketball. He traced the signature, thinking about a boy who'd believed in him when no one else did. "I wish you were here," Michael said to the empty room. "I wish you could see this." But Marcus wasn't there. Marcus would never be there again. So Michael did the only thing he could. He kept playing, kept winning, kept honoring the promise they'd carved into an oak tree. Chicago, Illinois, June 1984. The Chicago Bulls selected Michael Jordan with the 3rd pick in the NBA draft. Chicago, the city where Marcus had died. Michael hadn't wanted to come here. The association felt cursed, painful. But the NBA was his dream, and he couldn't turn it down just because of geography. On his first day in Chicago, before even visiting the Bulls' practice facility, Michael hired a private investigator. "I need you to find information about someone," Michael told the investigator, a weathered man named Don Fletcher who came highly recommended. Marcus Webb died in a car accident here in 1975. He was 14. What kind of information? Everything: where he's buried, what happened to his family, any records from the accident, everything. Don Fletcher nodded, taking notes. Can I ask why? He was my best friend, Michael said simply. He died and I never got to say goodbye. I need to know his story ended somewhere real, not just a rumor. 3 weeks later, Don Fletcher delivered his report. Marcus Webb had indeed died in Chicago, at least according to all available records. Car accident, March 15, 1975. His parents had died in separate accidents around the same time. There were hospital records, death certificates, the whole tragic story documented. I'm sorry, Don Fletcher said. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. But Michael was relieved in a strange way. At least Marcus's death was real, documented, not just neighborhood gossip. At least Michael could finally truly grieve. Where is he buried? Michael asked. Don Fletcher's expression turned uncomfortable. That's the thing, I couldn't find a burial record. Happens sometimes with indigent cases. He might have been cremated or buried in an unmarked grave. The trail goes cold after the death certificate. Michael felt that familiar ache in his chest. Even in death, Marcus had vanished without a trace. Present day. Michael's voice was thick with emotion as he finished his story. For years, I searched. Every time I came to Chicago for a game, I'd have someone look into it again. Different investigators, different approaches. But the answer was always the same. Marcus Webb died in 1975 and there was no grave to visit. Marcus was crying openly now. I'm so sorry you carried that pain. Don't apologize for dying, Michael said with a sad laugh. Apologize for not dying. Apologize for being alive all these years while I thought you were dead. I am sorry, God, Michael, if I could have remembered you. I know. Michael reached over and gripped Marcus's hand. I know you would have found me if you could, but you're here now, that's what matters. Marcus squeezed back. You became everything we dreamed, everything and more. We became it, Michael corrected. Every championship I thought about you, every fadeaway jumper was yours as much as mine. You were there, Marcus. In every moment you were there. They sat in silence, two old friends finally understanding the full scope of what they'd lost and what they'd carried. You said your story starts with my fadeaway jumper, Michael said finally. Tell me how you found your way back. Marcus took a deep breath, and for the first time since arriving, a genuine smile crossed his face. 2 years ago, my wife Sarah was watching a documentary about you. Marcus wiped his eyes and leaned back, a hint of wonder creeping into his voice. I need to back up a little. I need you to understand what my life looked like before the memories came back. Chicago, Illinois, 2023. Marcus Washington, the name he'd carried for 30 years, lived in a modest bungalow on Chicago's northwest side. At 62 years old, he'd retired from construction work the previous year after his knees finally gave out. His wife Sarah worked as a nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Their daughter Angela was a teacher in Milwaukee. Their son David worked at an auto shop in Detroit. It was a simple life, a good life, not remarkable but honest. Marcus had long ago accepted the gaps in his memory. The dreams about basketball courts and streetlights had faded to background noise, just part of who he was, like his brown eyes or the scar on his left knee from a construction accident in 1989. He'd built a life around the holes, filling in the spaces with new memories. Sarah's laugh, his children's first steps, Sunday dinners, small joys. Basketball had never interested him. He couldn't explain why. Whenever he saw it on television, something in his chest tightened uncomfortably, so he avoided it. Sarah watched football. Marcus read books. They lived peacefully. Until March 18, 2023. Sarah was in the living room watching television when Marcus came in from the garage, where he'd been organizing tools. Something about retirement made him want to sort and organize everything, as if putting his possessions in order might make sense of the years that felt missing. Marcus, come here, Sarah called. This documentary is incredible. What's it about? Marcus asked, not really interested, heading toward the kitchen for water. Michael Jordan, the basketball player. I know you don't like basketball, but this is more than that. It's about determination, about overcoming obstacles." Marcus's feet stopped moving. The name echoed in his head, Michael Jordan. He knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Greatest basketball player ever. But hearing it spoken aloud triggered something, a flutter in his chest, a sense of falling, a feeling of overwhelming importance that he couldn't explain. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, noticing his frozen posture. "Yeah, what channel is that?" "ESPN, come sit. You might actually like this." Marcus sat on the couch, his hands trembling slightly. On the screen, footage played of a younger Michael Jordan in his Chicago Bulls uniform, rising for a shot. The movement was poetry, the way he leaned back defying gravity, the ball arcing perfectly through the air. A fadeaway jumper. Marcus's vision tunneled. His breath caught. The world around him disappeared, and suddenly he was somewhere else, someone else. Memory fragment, time unknown. A basketball court lit by a single streetlight. Two boys, young and full of dreams. One of them rises up, leaning back impossibly far, the ball leaving his fingertips with perfect rotation. "Like this," the boy says. "Feel it in your chest first. The basket is just a detail." The other boy tries to copy the motion but loses his balance. They both laugh, the sound echoing in the quiet night. "Keep practicing," the first boy says. "When you make it big, don't forget the little guy who showed you how." Marcus gasped, coming back to the present. Sarah was staring at him with concern. "Marcus, you're pale. What's wrong?" I don't know, that shot, the way he moved, I've seen that before." "Of course you have. It's his signature move. He did it a million times." But Marcus shook his head. "No, I mean, before. I've seen it before." Sarah's expression shifted from concern to understanding. She'd lived with Marcus for 30 years. She knew about the gaps in his memory, about the dreams he couldn't explain, about the feeling that pieces of himself were missing. "Watch with me," she said gently, taking his hand. "Maybe there's something here for you." They watched the entire 3-hour documentary. Marcus couldn't look away. Every image of young Michael Jordan felt familiar, not like seeing a celebrity, but like seeing someone he'd known intimately. The intensity in Jordan's eyes, the fierce determination, the way he practiced obsessively. When the documentary showed footage of Jordan's childhood home in Wilmington, North Carolina, Marcus stood up abruptly. "I've been there," he said. "What?" "Wilmington. I've been there, I know that place." Sarah paused the documentary. "Marcus, you told me you grew up in Chicago. Your records say." "I know what the records say." Marcus's hands were shaking. "But I remember. God, Sarah, I remember a place with trees, quiet streets, not Chicago, somewhere else, somewhere that felt like home." "Sit down," Sarah said firmly. "Breathe. Tell me what you're remembering." But Marcus couldn't sit. Energy coursed through him, decades of suppressed memories fighting to surface. He paced the living room, his mind racing. A driveway with a crack in it, a basketball hoop with a torn net, a tree with carved words, and a boy. There was a boy, Sarah. I can almost see his face. "What boy?" Marcus turned to the television screen, frozen on an image of young Michael Jordan, maybe 10 or 11 years old, holding a basketball and smiling at the camera. "Him," Marcus whispered. "That boy." Over the next weeks, Marcus became obsessed. He watched every Michael Jordan documentary he could find. He read books about Jordan's childhood, his career, his life. Each new piece of information triggered more memories, not complete, not clear, but fragments that felt true in his bones. A basketball signed by Walt Frazier, the feeling of worn leather under his fingertips, a promise carved into tree bark, brothers forever, NBA dreams together, a boy with determined eyes and a shy smile, a boy who called him his best friend. "I knew him," Marcus told Sarah one night, his voice shaking. "I don't know how or when or what happened, but I knew Michael Jordan. We were friends. We played basketball together." Sarah didn't dismiss him as crazy. She'd been a nurse long enough to know that trauma could lock memories away, and sometimes the strangest triggers could bring them back. "Then we need to find out the truth," she said. "We need to figure out who you really are." Chicago, Illinois, summer 2023. Marcus started with his own paper trail. Sarah helped him request records, his birth certificate, foster care files, hospital records from the accident. The birth certificate came first. Marcus Webb, born April 3, 1961 in Wilmington, North Carolina. Marcus stared at the name. Marcus Webb, not Marcus Washington. He'd been Marcus Webb first. Wilmington, Sarah said, reading over his shoulder. That's where Michael Jordan grew up. The hospital records came next, and they were heartbreaking. Pages and pages documenting a 14-year-old boy's fight for life after a traumatic car accident. Coma, head trauma, memory loss. Notes from doctors saying the prognosis was uncertain, that he might never recover full cognitive function. But he had recovered. He'd rebuilt a life from nothing. The foster care records were fragmented, incomplete, exactly as Marcus remembered being told years ago. He'd been passed through the system, his name changed through clerical errors and bureaucratic confusion, his history lost in the shuffle. How do we prove you knew Michael Jordan? Sarah asked. I don't know. It was 40 years ago. We were children. What proof could possibly still exist? But Sarah wasn't ready to give up. You said something about a tree with carved words. Yes, an oak tree in the backyard of, I can almost see it, the house next to mine, or was it my backyard? The memories are jumbled. If the tree is still there, the carving might be too. It was a slim hope, but it was something. Wilmington, North Carolina, September 2023. Marcus and Sarah flew to Wilmington. Marcus had told his construction pension he needed the money for a medical procedure, not entirely a lie. This journey felt essential to his survival, to understanding who he really was. They rented a car and Marcus drove through the city, following half-remembered streets. Nothing looked familiar at first. 40 years had changed everything. New buildings, new roads, old neighborhoods transformed. But then Marcus turned onto a quiet residential street and his breath caught. Stop, he said. Stop the car. Sarah pulled over. Marcus stared at a row of modest houses, trees lining the sidewalk, everything peaceful and ordinary. I lived here, Marcus whispered. That house, number 412, I lived there. They got out and walked slowly down the sidewalk. The houses had been renovated, painted different colors, yards landscaped in new ways, but the bones were the same. Marcus stopped in front of number 412. A young couple was working in the front yard, planting flowers. Excuse me, Sarah called out. I'm sorry to bother you, but my husband thinks he lived here as a child. Would it be possible to see the backyard? The couple looked skeptical but intrigued. Sure, I guess. We've only been here 3 years. Bought it from an older couple who'd owned it since the 80s. They walked around the house. The backyard was small, with a wooden deck and a garden. And in the back corner, spreading its branches over both this property and the next, stood a massive oak tree. Marcus walked toward it like a man in a trance. His hands touched the rough bark and tears immediately filled his eyes. It's here, he whispered. God, it's still here. He searched the trunk, his fingers tracing every groove and mark. Years of growth had stretched and distorted the bark. Initials and carvings from decades of residence overlapped and intersected. But then, on the side facing the neighboring yard, barely visible under layers of weathered bark, Marcus found it. Brothers forever, NBA dreams together. His knees buckled. Sarah caught him, holding him up as sobs racked his body. We were friends, Marcus gasped. Michael Jordan and me, we were best friends. We made a promise right here. It's real. It's all real. The young couple watched, confused but moved by the raw emotion. Do you know who lives next door? Sarah asked them. Different families over the years. Right now it's a retired dentist and his wife. Why? That's where Michael Jordan grew up, Marcus said, his voice shaking. That's where I met him. That's where everything began. Back at their hotel that night, Marcus couldn't sleep. The memories were flooding back now, triggered by the tree, by the carved words, by standing in the physical space where his childhood had unfolded. He remembered Michael's face clearly now, the shy smile, the determination, the way he'd looked up to Marcus in those early days before becoming the greatest player in history. He remembered the last night they'd played together, the farewell, the promise. He remembered giving Michael his basketball. I have to contact him, Marcus told Sarah. I have to let him know I'm alive. How? You can't just call Michael Jordan. I'll write letters. I'll try to reach his management. There has to be a way. Over the next months, Marcus tried everything. He wrote detailed letters explaining who he was, including copies of his birth certificate, photos of the carved tree, everything he could think of to prove his identity. Every letter went unanswered, lost in the flood of fan mail. ignored by protective assistants screening out potential frauds. Marcus understood. Why would anyone believe that Michael Jordan's childhood friend, presumed dead for 40 years, was suddenly alive and trying to make contact? "There's only one way," Marcus finally told Sarah in February 2024. "I have to go to him in person." "Marcus, that's crazy. You can't just show up at Michael Jordan's house." "Why not? We were brothers. If I can just see him, look him in the eye, he'll know. He'll remember. I know he will." Sarah saw the desperation, the need, the decades of missing pieces finally clicking into place. How could she deny him this? "Then we go together," she said, "and we do it right, present day." Marcus finished his story, his voice hoarse from talking. "It took me months to find your address, more months to work up the courage to come. I was terrified you wouldn't remember me, or worse, that you'd remember and not care." Michael's face was streaked with tears. "Not remember you? Marcus, you've haunted me every single day of my life. Every fadeaway jumper was for you. Every championship was for both of us. You were never gone, not really." "I wasted so much time," Marcus said brokenly. 40 years we could have had together." "We didn't waste it." Michael's voice was fierce. "You survived impossible trauma. You built a life. You found love. You raised children. And I became who I became partly because I thought I'd lost you. The pain made me stronger. The memory of you pushed me harder. But we could have done it together. We did do it together, just not the way we planned." Michael stood and pulled Marcus up into another embrace. "You're here now. That's what matters. You found your way back to me. After 40 years of being lost, you found your way home." Marcus held onto his oldest friend, feeling the last pieces of himself finally click into place. The memories were complete now. The missing parts had been found. He knew who he was, Marcus Webb, Michael Jordan's first believer, his brother in all but blood. "I'm home," Marcus whispered. "I'm finally home." They stood like that for a long time, two men in their 60s holding on to each other in Michael Jordan's study, the weight of 40 lost years finally lifting from both their shoulders. When they finally pulled apart, Michael walked to his desk and picked up his phone. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked. "Calling my family, calling everyone who matters. They need to meet you. They need to know you're real." Michael paused, looking at Marcus with wonder still fresh in his eyes. "Unless you need to get back. Do you have somewhere to be?" Marcus laughed, a real laugh, the first in what felt like forever. "Sarah's at the hotel. She'll understand if I'm late. She's waited 40 years for me to find myself. She can wait a few more hours. Call her, invite her here. I want to meet the woman who helped you find your way back." While Marcus stepped into the hallway to call his wife, Michael stood alone in his study, his hands trembling. He looked at the Walt Frazier basketball in its glass case, at the photos of his championships lining the walls, at the life he'd built on a foundation that included the memory of a lost friend. Patricia appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Jordan, is everything all right? Should I be concerned about?" "Patricia, do you believe in miracles?" She blinked, surprised by the question. I suppose so. Why?" "Because one just walked through my front door." Michael's smile was radiant. "Cancel my afternoon meetings. Actually, cancel everything for the next week. And call my kids. Tell them to come over tonight. Tell them it's important. Tell them Uncle Marcus is real." Patricia's eyes widened. She'd heard Michael tell his children stories about Uncle Marcus for years, the childhood friend who taught him basketball, who died young, who Michael honored in private moments. The family had always thought he was like a guardian angel, a memory made mythical. "You mean the man at the door is?" "My best friend from childhood. He's alive, Patricia. He's been alive this whole time, and he just came home." Marcus returned, his phone in hand. "Sarah's on her way. She cried when I told her you believed me. She was scared you'd think I was crazy." "How could I think you're crazy when I've been talking to your ghost for 40 years? Michael shook his head. "Come on, I want to show you something." He led Marcus through the mansion, past rooms filled with evidence of an extraordinary life. They walked to the trophy room, a private space Michael rarely showed anyone. When Marcus entered, he stopped breathing. 6 NBA championship trophies gleamed under carefully positioned lights. 5 MVP awards stood in a row. Olympic gold medals hung on the wall. Jerseys from different teams, all bearing the number 23, were displayed in glass cases. But what made Marcus's knees weak was the centerpiece of the room. In the middle, on a pedestal lit by a single spotlight, sat a worn basketball. The leather was old, cracked in places, the signature faded but still visible, Walt Frazier. "You kept it," Marcus whispered, walking toward it like a pilgrim approaching a shrine. "I've kept it in every home I've ever owned. It's traveled with me around the world, through every move, every championship, every moment of my life." Michael's voice was thick. "When I won my first championship, I held this ball and talked to it like you were there. When I retired, I told this ball thank you. It's been my most treasured possession for 40 years." Marcus reached out, his fingers hovering over the glass case but not touching. "I remember giving it to you. I remember thinking it was the most important thing I owned, and that's why you needed to have it. It was the most important thing you owned, and it became the most important thing I owned." Michael opened the case. "Here." "Michael, I can't." "Take it, hold it, it's yours. It's always been yours." Marcus lifted the ball from its case. The leather felt familiar, the weight exactly as he remembered. 40 years disappeared. He was 11 years old again, standing in his driveway, teaching his best friend how to shoot a fadeaway. "We were so young," Marcus said softly. "We thought we knew everything. We thought we could control the future." "We were right about one thing," Michael said. "We knew we were brothers. That part came true." Marcus looked around the trophy room again, really seeing it this time. "You did it, Michael. You became everything we dreamed and more. You became the greatest." "We did it," Michael corrected firmly. "Every shot I took, you were there. Every time I wanted to quit, I heard your voice telling me to keep going. Every championship was ours, Marcus. All of it. It was always ours." They stood in silence, surrounded by the tangible evidence of a legendary career built on the foundation of a childhood friendship. "I need you to understand something," Michael said. "The investigators I hired, the searches I conducted, the years I spent trying to find out what happened to you, it wasn't just grief. It was love. You were my brother in every way that mattered, and losing you shaped me as much as knowing you did." Marcus's eyes filled with tears again. "I'm sorry I couldn't remember. I'm sorry I was lost for so long." "Stop apologizing. You survived trauma that should have killed you. You rebuilt yourself from nothing. You found love, raised a family, built a good life. Marcus, you're a miracle. Your survival is as remarkable as anything I ever did on a basketball court." "But you became Michael Jordan. I became nobody." "You became Marcus Webb," Michael said fiercely. "The man who believed in me first. The man who taught me that greatness starts in your chest, not in your hands. The man who made me promise to never quit. You're not nobody. You're the reason I'm somebody." The words hung in the air between them, healing decades of separation and loss. 2 hours later, Sarah arrived. Michael met her at the door personally. She was a small woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, wearing a simple dress and nervous smile. "Mrs. Washington." "Please call me Sarah. And I should be calling you Mr. Jordan, I suppose, but Marcus has been calling you Michael all day, so." Michael pulled her into a hug, surprising them both. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for believing him. Thank you for helping him find me." Sarah hugged him back, tears streaming down her face. "He's been incomplete for 30 years. I watched him have dreams he couldn't understand, mourn losses he couldn't name. I'm just grateful he finally found the missing piece." When Sarah entered the study where Marcus waited, husband and wife embraced. Michael watched them together and saw the deep bond, the decades of partnership, the love that had sustained Marcus through his lost years. "She's wonderful," Michael told Marcus later. "You chose well." "I got lucky," Marcus said. "In a life where I lost everything, I found her. She saved me in ways I didn't even understand until now." That evening, Michael's children and grandchildren arrived. His daughter Jasmine came first, her teenage son in tow. Then his son Marcus Jr., named after the friend his father had mourned, arrived with his wife and 2 young daughters. Finally, Jeffrey, Michael's youngest, showed up with his fiancée. They gathered in the living room, confused about why they'd been summoned on a weeknight. Michael stood before them, Marcus beside him, both men nervous. "Kids, there's someone I need you to meet. Someone I've told you about your whole lives." Michael's voice was steady but emotional. You know all the stories about Uncle Marcus, the friend who taught me basketball, the friend who believed in me before anyone else did, the friend who died when he was 14. The family nodded, familiar with the stories but confused about where this was going. I was wrong about one thing, Michael continued. He didn't die, he survived, and after 40 years he found his way back to me. Michael turned to Marcus. This is Marcus Webb, my childhood best friend, my brother, your Uncle Marcus. The room erupted. Jasmine started crying immediately. Marcus Jr. stood frozen in shock. Jeffrey kept saying, what, over and over. The grandchildren looked confused but picked up on the emotional energy in the room. Marcus stood awkwardly, overwhelmed by the attention until Marcus Jr. stepped forward. You're real, he said. Uncle Marcus is real. I'm real, Marcus said softly. And I'm honored your father named you after me. I didn't know, I didn't remember, but I'm so grateful. Marcus Jr. hugged him, then Jasmine, then Jeffrey. One by one, Michael's family embraced this stranger who wasn't a stranger, this ghost who had flesh and blood. 8-year-old Jamie, Michael's grandson who'd been playing with basketball cards earlier, tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Are you really the one who taught Grandpa basketball? Marcus knelt down to the boy's level. I taught him a few things, but your grandpa, he took what I taught him and became the greatest player who ever lived. That was all him. Did you really carve a promise in a tree? Marcus smiled. We did, brothers forever, NBA dreams together. And even though life took us apart, the promise stayed true. Your grandpa kept it alive. Jamie looked at his grandfather with new wonder. You kept a promise for 40 years. I did, Michael said, his voice breaking. Because promises to the people you love matter. They matter more than anything. They ordered pizza. Michael Jordan and his childhood friend sitting on the floor with children and grandchildren, eating from paper plates like it was the most natural thing in the world. Marcus told stories about young Michael that the family had never heard. The time Michael tried to dunk at age 10 and fell flat on his face. The time they played until 3 a.m. and Michael's mother grounded him for a week. The time Marcus convinced Michael he could beat his brother Larry, and Michael actually did. Michael told stories about the years after Marcus left, how he'd practiced the fadeaway until his arms ached, how he talked to the Walt Frazier basketball before big games, how every time he won something, he'd imagine Marcus was there celebrating with him. At the '91 championship parade in Chicago, Michael said, I looked out at the crowd and thought, Marcus should be here. This is his city now. If he'd lived, maybe we'd be teammates. I actually looked for you in the crowd, even though I knew it was impossible. I was probably at a construction site, Marcus said with a sad laugh, completely unaware that my childhood best friend was riding past in a parade looking for me. Sarah reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand. Jasmine wiped tears from her eyes. What happens now? Marcus Jr. asked. I mean, you found each other. What's next? Michael and Marcus looked at each other. They hadn't discussed it. They'd been too caught up in the miracle of reunion to think about practicalities. Now we make up for lost time, Michael said firmly. Marcus, I want you and Sarah to stay in North Carolina. I have a guest house. It's fully furnished, completely private. Stay for a while. Stay for as long as you want. We have 40 years to catch up on. Michael, we can't impose. It's not imposing, it's family, your family, you've always been family. Michael's voice was fierce. I lost you once. I'm not losing you again. So yes, you're staying, both of you. Sarah looked at Marcus, asking a silent question. Marcus nodded. We'd be honored, Marcus said. Later that night, after the family had left and Sarah had retired to the guest house, Michael and Marcus sat on Michael's private basketball court under the stars. They didn't play. They just sat, two old men with bad knees and good memories, looking up at the Carolina sky. Thank you for finding me, Michael said quietly. Thank you for never forgetting me, Marcus replied. I want to do something, Michael said. Something big, something that honors what we had and helps other people. What are you thinking? I don't know yet, but something. A foundation maybe. Something that helps kids like you, kids who lost everything but fought their way back. Something that makes sure other people don't lose 40 years like we did. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That would be good. That would mean something. They sat in comfortable silence, the way only old friends can. Marcus. Yeah, I'm really glad you're not dead. Marcus laughed, a real, genuine, joyful laugh. Me too, Michael, me too. Above them, stars wheeled across the sky, the same stars that had witnessed two boys carving a promise into a tree 40 years ago. The promise had been kept in the strangest way possible, but it had been kept. Brothers forever. NBA dreams together. The dream had changed shape, taken unexpected paths, broken and healed and broken again. But in the end, sitting on a basketball court in North Carolina, two old friends found that the dream had come true after all. Not the way they'd planned, but true nonetheless. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus and Sarah settled into the guest house on Michael's estate. It was larger than their home in Chicago, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over perfectly manicured gardens and Michael's private basketball court. Every morning, Michael would knock on their door with coffee and fresh pastries from a bakery in town. Every evening they'd share dinner, sometimes just the three of them, sometimes with Michael's children joining, sometimes with old friends Michael wanted Marcus to meet. But it was the afternoons that mattered most. Those belonged to Michael and Marcus alone. Day 3, the visit to Wilmington. "Get in the car," Michael said one Wednesday morning. "We're taking a trip." "Where?" Marcus asked. "Home, the real home, Wilmington." They drove the 2 hours mostly in silence, both men lost in memories of a place that existed more in their hearts than in reality. The Wilmington they'd known was gone, replaced by a modern city that had grown and changed beyond recognition. But some things remained. Michael drove straight to their old neighborhood. The houses looked different, renovated, repainted, landscaped with professional care that hadn't existed in 1972. But the bones were the same. The street layout hadn't changed. The trees had grown taller, but they were still there. Michael parked in front of 412, Marcus's old house. "Different family lives there now," Marcus said. "I met them when Sarah and I came before. They were nice. Let me see the backyard." "I know, I called them yesterday, told them who I was, told them we were coming." Michael smiled. "Turns out they're huge basketball fans. They're at work, but they said we could let ourselves in through the side gate." They walked around to the backyard, moving slowly, two old men with old knees navigating uneven ground. The oak tree stood magnificent and unchanged, its branches spreading wide enough to shade both properties. Marcus walked to it immediately, his hands finding the carved words without searching. 40 years of growth had stretched the letters, made them harder to read, but they were still there. "Brothers forever. NBA dreams together." Michael stood beside him, placing his hand on the bark just below the carving. "We stood right here, right in this exact spot. You had your pocket knife. I was scared someone would catch us vandalizing the tree." "You were always the rule follower," Marcus said with a small smile. "I had to convince you it wasn't vandalism. It was a contract, a sacred oath." "You were right, it was sacred." Michael pulled out his own pocket knife, "and it still is." "What are you doing?" "Adding to it." Michael carefully carved below the original message, "Found again 2024. Marcus watched, tears streaming down his face. When Michael finished, he handed the knife to Marcus. "Your turn, add something." Marcus took the knife with shaking hands. Below Michael's addition he carved, "Promise kept." They stepped back, looking at the complete message. "Brothers forever. NBA dreams together. Found again 2024. Promise kept." "There," Michael said, his voice rough with emotion. "Now it's complete. Now the story has an ending." "Not an ending," Marcus corrected. "A new beginning." They walked next door to 414, Michael's childhood home. The current owners had painted it blue. It had been white when Michael lived there. But the driveway was still there, still the same cracked concrete. Marcus stood at the edge of the driveway, staring at the rusty basketball hoop attached to the garage. It wasn't the same hoop from their childhood. That one had been replaced decades ago, but it was close enough. "I can see us," Marcus whispered. "Right here." Two skinny kids who thought they could conquer the world with a basketball and a dream. "We did conquer it," Michael said. "Just not together, not the way we planned." "Why do you think it happened this way?" Marcus asked suddenly. "Why did I have to lose everything? Why did we have to spend 40 years apart? What was the point of all that pain?" Michael was quiet for a long time, considering the question that had no easy answer. "I don't know if there's a point," he finally said. "I don't know if the universe had a plan or if we just got unlucky. But I know this. Losing you made me fight harder. It made me appreciate every moment on the court because I was playing for both of us. And you, surviving what you survived, rebuilding yourself from nothing, that took more strength than anything I ever did. But we lost so much time." "We did, but maybe," Michael struggled to find the words. "Maybe we needed to become who we are separately before we could find each other again. Maybe 11-year-old us wasn't ready for this friendship to last a lifetime. Maybe we needed to grow, to suffer, to build our own lives before we could truly appreciate what we had." Marcus considered this. "You think if I just moved to Chicago normally, if we'd kept in touch, we would have drifted apart anyway?" "I don't know, maybe, probably. People grow up. They change. Childhood friendships don't always survive adulthood." Michael put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "But this, finding each other after 40 years, after trauma and grief and loss, this is stronger than any childhood friendship. This is permanent. This is earned." Marcus nodded slowly. "I like that, the idea that we earned this, that the pain had a purpose. Even if it didn't have a purpose, we can give it one now." Michael pulled out his phone. "Which brings me to something I want to talk to you about." They sat on the curb of their old street, two legends in their own ways, one famous, one forgotten, and Michael laid out his idea. "I want to start a foundation, the Marcus Webb Foundation. It'll do two things: help kids in foster care get the resources they need to succeed, and fund services to reconnect families separated by tragedy and system failures." Marcus stared at him. "Michael, that's too much. You don't need to." "I need to exactly this much," Michael interrupted. "You know how many kids are out there right now, lost in the system like you were? How many families have lost each other because of clerical errors and bureaucratic incompetence? How many people are living with holes in their hearts because they can't find the people they love? Thousands, probably more." "Exactly. So we're going to help them. We're going to make sure that other kids don't lose 40 years. We're going to fund investigators, social workers, DNA databases, whatever it takes to bring families back together." Marcus's throat tightened. "Why name it after me? You're the famous one. Your name would raise more money." "Because you're the reason I became who I am. Because you deserve to be in the NBA with me. And since you couldn't be, your name deserves to be on something that matters." Michael's eyes were fierce. "And because every kid who gets help through this foundation will know your story. They'll know that Marcus Webb survived the impossible and found his way home. They'll know that hope is real." Marcus broke down completely, sobbing into his hands. Michael put an arm around his shoulders and let him cry. "We're going to announce it publicly," Michael continued softly. "We're going to tell our story to the world. Not for attention, I've had enough of that for 2 lifetimes, but because our story can help people. It can give them hope. What if people don't believe it? What if they think I'm a fraud trying to get money from you? Let them think whatever they want. We know the truth. We have the carved tree, the birth certificates, the hospital records, the basketball. We have 40 years of evidence, but more than that, we have this." Michael tapped his chest. "We have what we feel, and that's more real than any skepticism." Marcus wiped his face, trying to compose himself. "When?" 2 weeks, I'm arranging a press conference. You, me, and Sarah on stage, we tell our story, we announce the foundation, we change lives." "I'm terrified." "Good, that means it matters." Michael stood, offering Marcus a hand up. "Come on, I want to show you one more place before we head back." They drove to the old community center where Michael had played basketball as a teenager. It had been renovated, modernized, but the outdoor courts were still there. A group of teenagers was playing a pickup game, exactly like Michael and Marcus had done 40 years earlier. Michael and Marcus stood at the fence, watching. "You see that kid?" Michael pointed to a skinny boy who was getting pushed around by bigger players. "That was me. Small, overlooked, overshadowed by everyone else." "You see that kid?" Marcus pointed to a slightly taller boy who was encouraging the smaller one, setting picks for him, passing him the ball. "That was me. I always looked for the underdog." They watched in comfortable silence as the game played out. The smaller boy hit a fadeaway jumper, awkward form, but it went in. His friend cheered loudly. "We were them," Marcus said softly. We were, and look at us now. One of the teenagers noticed them and did a double take. He elbowed his friend, pointing. Within seconds, the entire game had stopped, and a dozen teenage boys were staring at Michael Jordan standing at their court. "Oh boy," Michael muttered. "Here we go." "Mr. Jordan," one boy shouted, running over. "Is that really you?" "It's me," Michael said with a smile. "What are you doing here?" Michael looked at Marcus, then back at the teenagers. "Visiting old memories with my best friend. We used to play on courts just like this one. Would you play with us? Just one game?" Michael looked at his 62-year-old knees, then at Marcus's equally worn-out knees, then at the hopeful faces of the teenagers. "What do you think?" he asked Marcus. "One game for old time's sake." Marcus grinned, the first truly carefree smile Michael had seen on his face. "The basket is just a detail, right?" "Right." They played for 20 minutes, two old men and a group of starstruck teenagers. Michael and Marcus were on the same team, passing to each other with an intuitive understanding that transcended the 40 years they'd been apart. Michael took a fadeaway jumper, his signature move. It swished through the net. "That's how you do it," one teenager shouted. "Actually," Michael said, breathing hard, pointing at Marcus, "he taught me that shot, summer of 1972. We were 11 years old, and he showed me how to feel it in my chest before the ball ever leaves your hands." The teenagers looked at Marcus with new respect. "You taught Michael Jordan basketball?" one asked, awed. "I taught him one shot," Marcus said modestly. "He took it and became the greatest player ever. That was all him." "That's not true," Michael said firmly. "You taught me to believe in myself. You taught me that practice matters more than talent. You taught me that greatness starts in your heart, not in your hands. Everything I became started with you." The teenagers didn't fully understand the weight of what Michael was saying, but they could sense the emotion behind it. When they finally left the court, exhausted and happy, the teenagers asked for autographs. Michael signed basketballs and shirts, but then he did something unexpected. He made each boy shake Marcus's hand too. "This is Marcus Webb," Michael told them. "Remember that name. In 2 weeks, you're going to hear his story, and it's going to matter to you. It's going to show you that life can take everything from you, but if you keep fighting, if you never give up, you can find your way back. Remember him." The boys shook Marcus's hand solemnly, not fully understanding but sensing they were part of something important. On the drive back to Charlotte, Michael and Marcus were quiet, both processing the day. "Thank you," Marcus finally said. "For what?" "For making me matter, for making my survival mean something. For 40 years, I thought I was nobody, just a construction worker with a broken past, but you've made me feel like I was worth finding." "Marcus, you were always worth finding. You've always mattered." Michael's voice was intense. "Don't you see? You're not famous like me, but you're just as important. You survived trauma that should have destroyed you. You built a life from nothing. You raised kids, loved your wife, worked hard every single day. That's heroic. That's remarkable." "It doesn't feel heroic. It just feels like surviving." "Sometimes surviving is the most heroic thing you can do." Michael glanced at him. "And now, with the foundation, with our story, your survival is going to help thousands of other people survive too. You're going to save lives, Marcus. Not with basketball, with hope." Marcus looked out the window, watching North Carolina countryside roll past. "I spent 40 years feeling incomplete, like pieces of me were missing. But sitting here with you, going back to where we started, I finally feel whole again." "Me too," Michael said quietly. "Me too." They drove in comfortable silence the rest of the way home, two old friends who had found each other against impossible odds, ready to share their miracle with the world. The press conference was 2 weeks away. The foundation was being established. The story was about to be told. But for now, in this moment, driving through North Carolina with his best friend beside him, Michael Jordan felt something he hadn't felt since he was 11 years old, standing under an oak tree. Complete peace. The feeling lasted exactly 9 days. On the 9th day after their trip to Wilmington, Michael sat in his study reviewing the press conference plans with his publicist, Monica Chen. Marcus and Sarah were in town shopping for clothes. Marcus insisted he needed something appropriate for appearing on national television with Michael Jordan. Monica spread documents across Michael's desk. We've confirmed coverage from ESPN, CNN, ABC, NBC, and about 40 other outlets. This is going to be huge, Michael. The story is incredible. Childhood friends separated by tragedy, reunited after 40 years. It's got everything. It's not a story, Michael said quietly. It's our lives. I know. I just mean from a media perspective, this is. Monica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. That's strange. What? My assistant is forwarding me something. An email that just came into our general press inquiry box. She read from her phone, her frown deepening. It's from someone claiming to have information about Marcus Webb. Says the story we're about to tell isn't complete. Says there are details we need to know before going public. Michael's stomach tightened. What kind of details? Doesn't say, just asks for a meeting, private, before the press conference. Monica looked up. Could be a crank, could be someone trying to extort money, could be nothing. Or it could be something real. Michael stood. Set up the meeting here, tomorrow. I want to know what this is about before Marcus hears anything. Monica hesitated. Michael, it's probably nothing. Some conspiracy theorist or... Set it up, Michael said firmly. I need to know. The next morning. Michael didn't tell Marcus about the meeting. He didn't want to worry him, didn't want to cast shadows on the joy and healing of the past 2 weeks. Sarah and Marcus were at the guest house, planning their trip back to Chicago to pack up their belongings for a longer stay in North Carolina. The visitor arrived at 10 o'clock. Patricia showed him into Michael's study, a man in his late 50s with graying hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a weathered briefcase. He wore khakis and a polo shirt, looking more like a retired teacher than a threat. Mr. Jordan, thank you for seeing me, the man said, extending his hand. My name is Dr. Robert Gaines. I'm a neurologist, retired now. I worked at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago from 1974 to 2010. Michael shook his hand warily. You said you have information about Marcus Webb. I do. And I need you to understand that I'm not here to cause problems or make demands. I'm here because I've carried a burden for 40 years, and your press conference gave me the opportunity to finally set it right. Dr. Gaines sat when Michael gestured to a chair. I was one of the doctors who treated Marcus when he was brought in after the accident in 1975. Michael sat down heavily. You treated him, you were there. I was a resident then, young and idealistic. Marcus, or the John Doe we called him for those first weeks, was my patient. I was there when he came out of the coma. I was there during his rehabilitation. I was there when he couldn't remember his own name. Dr. Gaines' voice was heavy with old sadness. And I was there when we made a decision that I've regretted ever since. What decision? Dr. Gaines opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder, yellowed with age. These are copies of Marcus's medical records. The official ones that went into the system and the unofficial ones that didn't. Michael's hands clenched. Explain. When Marcus woke from his coma, he had severe memory loss, total retrograde amnesia. He couldn't remember anything before the accident, not his parents, not his home, not his life. The head trauma had been catastrophic. We weren't even sure he'd ever recover those memories. I know this already, Marcus told me. But what Marcus doesn't know, what no one knows except me and one other doctor who since passed away, is that his memories started coming back after about 3 months. Michael felt like the floor had dropped from beneath him. What? Not all of them, not complete, but fragments. He'd talk about North Carolina, about a basketball court, about a friend, about promises. Dr. Gaines' hands shook as he opened the folder. I documented it all. Every fragment, every memory. I was excited. I thought we were witnessing a miraculous recovery. Then why doesn't Marcus remember this? Why doesn't he know his memories came back? Dr. Gaines' face crumpled. Because Dr. Victor Hartwell, the senior physician on Marcus's case, decided not to tell him. Michael stood abruptly, anger flooding through him. You kept his memories from him. Why would you do that? Please let me explain. Sit down, please. Dr. Gaines waited until Michael sat again, though his posture was rigid with fury. Marcus was 14. His parents were dead. He had no family, no support system. He was going into foster care. Dr. Hartwell believed that if Marcus remembered his past, it would cause more trauma. He'd have to grieve his parents all over again, consciously this time. He'd have to deal with survivor's guilt. He'd have to process massive trauma while living in an unstable foster situation. That wasn't your decision to make. I know, God, I know, Dr. Gaines' voice broke. I was young. Dr. Hartwell was my mentor, highly respected. He convinced me that we were protecting Marcus, that sometimes ignorance is kinder than knowledge, that a boy with no memories had a blank slate, a chance to build a new life without the weight of tragedy. So you let him suffer. You let him live with holes in his heart for 40 years when you could have helped him understand. We told ourselves we were helping. We told ourselves it was mercy. Dr. Gaines pulled out several documents. Dr. Hartwell wrote in his private notes that were never filed officially, that Marcus's memory loss was a blessing in disguise, that the boy would be better off not remembering. So we stopped documenting the memory fragments. We dismissed them as dreams or false memories. We erased them from his official record. Michael felt sick. Did Marcus ask about the memories? Did he try to understand them? He did. For months, he'd ask us about the fragments. Were they real? Had he lived in North Carolina? Did he have a friend? Each time we told him they were probably just dreams, confusion from the head trauma, not real memories. Dr. Gaines wiped his eyes. Eventually, he stopped asking. The fragments faded. His conscious mind accepted the narrative we gave him. Total amnesia, no recovery, start fresh. But his subconscious never forgot. No, based on what I've read about his life, the dreams he had, the discomfort around basketball, the feeling of incompleteness, his subconscious held onto everything. His brain was trying to tell him the truth, and we'd programmed him not to listen. Michael stood again, pacing the room, trying to control his rage. Why are you telling me this now? Guilt, conscience, what? Both, and because I saw the announcement about your press conference. I saw Marcus's photo. After 40 years, I recognized him immediately. I've thought about him so many times, wondered if we made the right choice, wondered what happened to him. Dr. Gaines stood as well. And when I read that he'd only recently recovered his memories, that he'd lived his whole life feeling incomplete, I realized we didn't protect him at all. We stole from him. We stole decades of understanding, of peace, of potentially finding you sooner. You stole his entire life, Michael said flatly. Yes, and I need to make it right. Before you go public with this story, you need to know the complete truth. Marcus needs to know. Dr. Gaines held out the folder. These records show that his memories were trying to come back in 1975. They show what we did or didn't do. They show our failure. Michael took the folder, his hands shaking. Inside were photocopies of handwritten notes, medical charts, documentation of a 14-year-old Marcus Webb describing a basketball court, a best friend, a carved promise in a tree. He remembered me, Michael whispered. Even then, part of him remembered me. Part of him never forgot you. We just convinced him not to trust that part. Dr. Gaines' voice was broken. I'm so sorry. To him, to you, to everyone affected by our arrogance. We played God with a boy's mind, and he paid the price. Michael stood in silence, processing this revelation. His first instinct was to throw this man out to protect Marcus from ever knowing this. But then he remembered what Marcus had said. I spent 40 years feeling incomplete, like pieces of me were missing. Those pieces had been trying to return almost immediately, and doctors had sent them away. What do you want from me? Michael asked coldly. Nothing. I want to tell Marcus the truth. I want to apologize to him directly. And if he wants to take legal action, pursue justice, go public with what we did, I'll support him fully. I'll testify. I'll face whatever consequences come. Dr. Gaines met Michael's eyes. I'm 68 years old. I'm dying, lung cancer, 6 months maybe. I don't want to die carrying this. And more importantly, Marcus deserves to know that his struggle to remember wasn't his failure. It was ours. Michael was quiet for a long moment. He's happy right now. For the first time in 40 years, he feels complete. Telling him this could destroy that. Or it could free him completely. Right now, he probably blames himself on some level. Why couldn't he remember sooner? Why did it take so long? He needs to know it wasn't his fault. His brain was trying. We just blocked the path. Michael walked to the window, looking out at his basketball court where he and Marcus had sat under the stars. He thought about everything Marcus had told him, the dreams, the confusion, the decades of feeling lost. "I need to think about this," Michael said finally. "I need to decide if telling him helps or hurts. Of course, take the records, read them, decide what's best." Dr. Gaines pulled out a business card. "My contact information. When you're ready, if you're ready, call me. I'll come back, I'll face him, I'll answer for what I did." "Why did you really come forward?" Michael asked, turning to face him. "The real reason, not guilt, not conscience. What made you actually do this?" Dr. Gaines smiled sadly. "I saw the photo of you two together, saw how you were looking at him, like he was the most precious thing in the world, like his survival mattered more than anything. And I realized that Marcus Webb had been precious all along. He deserved better than we gave him. He deserved truth, even when truth was painful." The doctor's voice dropped to a whisper. "And I realized that I've been incomplete too, carrying this secret, living with this failure. Maybe telling the truth will help us both finally be whole." After Dr. Gaines left, Michael sat alone in his study for 2 hours, reading through the medical records, page after page of Marcus's memory fragments from 1975. Patient mentioned a tree today, says he carved something important in it, became agitated when asked for details, could not remember specifics. Patient dreamed about playing basketball with a boy he calls M, or possibly Mike, woke crying, asked if the dream was real, advised likely false memory from trauma. Patient insists he lived in North Carolina before Chicago. Records confirm family did live in Wilmington, NC for approximately 2 years. Patient has no conscious memory of this. Subconscious appears to be accessing real memories. Dr. Hartwell advises not confirming, believes reconnecting with past will cause unnecessary pain. Patient asked again about the friend, describes boy who taught him basketball, very specific details, fadeaway jumper, carved promise, basketball signed by someone named Walt. These details match reality too closely to be fabrications. Patient's memories are returning. Dr. Hartwell still advises against confirmation. Michael's tears fell on the pages as he read. Marcus had been trying to find his way home since 1975, and doctors had blocked every attempt, convinced they knew better. The final entry was dated September 1975. Patient has stopped asking about memories, appears to have accepted narrative of complete amnesia. Dr. Hartwell believes this is positive outcome. Patient can move forward without burden of past. I am less certain but defer to senior physician's judgment. May God forgive us if we are wrong." Michael closed the folder and sat in the dark study as the sun set. Tomorrow was the press conference. Tomorrow, he and Marcus would tell their story to the world. It would be a story of loss and reunion, of hope against impossible odds, of love that transcended time. But should it also be a story of medical malpractice, of doctors who played God, of 40 years stolen not just by tragedy but by arrogance? Michael knew he had to tell Marcus, but how and when? He picked up his phone and called Monica. "Postpone the press conference," he said. "What, Michael, we can't just..." "Postpone it 2 weeks. Tell them something came up. Tell them we need more time. Tell them whatever you want, but postpone it." "Does this have to do with that doctor who came to see you?" "Yes, and I can't explain yet. Just trust me, please." Monica sighed. "Okay, I'll make it happen. But Michael, whatever this is, be careful. Don't let it destroy what you and Marcus have found." "I'm trying not to," Michael said. "I'm trying not to." He hung up and sat in the growing darkness, holding the folder that contained truth he wasn't sure Marcus should know. Outside on the basketball court, he could see Marcus and Sarah walking together, holding hands, laughing about something. Marcus looked lighter than Michael had ever seen him, free of the weight he'd carried for decades. And Michael had to decide whether to give him truth or peace, whether knowing would heal him or break him all over again. The knock came at his study door. Marcus's voice. "Michael." "You in there? We brought dinner." Michael quickly hid the folder in his desk drawer. "Coming. Give me a minute." He took a deep breath, wiped his face, and prepared to face his best friend while carrying a secret that could change everything. The game, as it turned out, was far from over. Michael joined Marcus and Sarah for dinner, forcing smiles and making conversation while the folder in his desk drawer burned in his mind. They ate Thai food on the patio, watching the sun set over the basketball court, and Marcus talked excitedly about the press conference. "Sarah helped me write down some things I want to say," Marcus said, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. "I'm not good with public speaking, but I figured if I write it down." "Marcus, about the press conference," Michael interrupted. "We need to postpone it." Marcus's face fell. "What, why?" "Just for 2 weeks. Some logistics came up, media scheduling conflicts, nothing serious." The lies tasted bitter on Michael's tongue. "Oh," Marcus tried to hide his disappointment. "Sure, that's fine. 2 more weeks won't matter after 40 years, right?" Sarah studied Michael's face. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Michael lied. "Just business complications." But Sarah's eyes said she didn't believe him, and Michael looked away. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He paced his bedroom, then his study, finally ending up on the basketball court at 2 a.m. shooting free throws in the dark. The motion was automatic, meditative. Bounce twice. Spin the ball. Shoot. The ball swished through the net over and over, but the rhythm didn't bring peace. He heard footsteps and turned to see Marcus walking toward him, also unable to sleep. "Couldn't rest either?" Marcus asked. "Too much on my mind," Michael admitted. Marcus picked up the ball and shot. It hit the rim and bounced off. "I'm rusty. You'd think muscle memory would last forever." "Some things do last forever. Some things we forget." Michael caught the rebound. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When the memories started coming back 2 years ago, when you first saw that documentary and felt that recognition, what did it feel like?" Marcus thought about it. "Like finding something I didn't know I'd lost. Like suddenly understanding a language I'd been hearing my whole life but couldn't translate." "Why?" "Did it hurt, the remembering?" "It hurt and healed at the same time. The memories came with grief, realizing what I'd missed, who I'd lost, but they also came with understanding. Suddenly all those dreams made sense. The emptiness had a name." Marcus looked at Michael. "Why are you asking?" Michael held the basketball, turning it in his hands. "What if I told you there was more to remember, more to your story that you don't know yet?" Marcus went very still. "What do you mean?" Michael almost told him everything right then, almost pulled out the folder and showed him the truth. But looking at Marcus's face, peaceful, healing, happy for the first time in decades, he couldn't do it. Not yet. Not without preparing him first. Not without making sure the truth would heal rather than destroy. "Nothing," Michael said, chickening out. "Just thinking about how memories work, how the brain protects us sometimes." Marcus studied him. "You're hiding something." "I'm not." "Michael, I've known you since we were 10 years old. Even with 40 years gone, I can still read you. Something's wrong. Tell me." Michael sat on the court and Marcus sat beside him. The night was quiet except for crickets and the distant sound of traffic. "If I told you something that would change how you see your past," Michael said carefully, "something that might make you angry or hurt you but would also give you answers, would you want to know?" "That's a complicated question." "I know." Marcus was quiet for a long time. "My whole life I've lived with not knowing. The gaps, the questions, the feeling that pieces were missing. It nearly broke me, Michael, not knowing who I was, where I came from, why I felt so incomplete." He picked up a small stone from the court and turned it over in his hands. "So yes, even if the truth hurts, even if it makes me angry, I'd want to know. Because not knowing is worse. Not knowing is a different kind of death." Michael nodded slowly. "Okay, then tomorrow we need to have a difficult conversation. There's someone you need to meet, someone from your past." "Who?" "One of your doctors from 1975. He came to see me today. He has information about your recovery, about your memories." Michael's voice was heavy. "About things that were done to you that you don't know about." Marcus's expression shifted from curiosity to concern to something harder. "Things that were done to me." "I'll explain everything tomorrow, I promise. But tonight just know that whatever you learn, I'm here. We're in this together. You're not alone anymore." Marcus gripped Michael's shoulder. "I've never been alone. Even when I couldn't remember you, part of me knew someone was out there, someone who mattered, someone who was looking for me." "I never stopped looking," Michael said quietly. Even when everyone said you were dead, part of me kept searching. They sat together under the stars, two old friends on the precipice of a truth that would change everything. The next morning, Dr. Gaines returned at Michael's request. This time Marcus and Sarah were present. They sat in Michael's study, Michael and Marcus on the couch, Sarah in a chair beside her husband, Dr. Gaines in the chair across from them. Michael made introductions. Marcus, Sarah, this is Dr. Robert Gaines. He was one of your doctors at Northwestern Memorial in 1975. Marcus looked at the older man with confusion. I don't remember you. I wouldn't expect you to. You were very young and very confused. Dr. Gaines' hands trembled. Mr. Webb, Marcus, I've come to tell you something that I should have told you 40 years ago. Something that might make you hate me. Something that will certainly hurt you. But it's the truth, and you deserve it. Sarah reached over and took Marcus's hand. I'm listening, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the tension in his shoulders. Dr. Gaines told the story exactly as he'd told Michael. The memory fragments, the returning memories, Dr. Hartwell's decision to hide them, the months of Marcus asking questions and being told his memories weren't real, the eventual acceptance of false amnesia. As he spoke, Michael watched Marcus's face cycle through emotions, confusion, disbelief, anger, devastation. When Dr. Gaines finished, the room was silent except for Sarah's quiet crying. You're telling me, Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet, that my memories tried to come back in 1975. That I was remembering Michael, remembering North Carolina, remembering everything. Yes. And you told me it was dreams, that it wasn't real. Yes. You convinced a 14-year-old boy that his own mind was lying to him. Yes, Dr. Gaines' voice broke, and I've regretted it every day since. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. I could have found Michael. I could have called Wilmington, searched for the oak tree, found my way back. I was remembering. My brain was trying to save me, and you, he whirled on Dr. Gaines. You stopped it. You blocked it. You stole 40 years from me. Marcus, Michael started, standing. No, Marcus's voice was anguished. Do you understand what this means? I didn't have to live in confusion. I didn't have to feel incomplete. I didn't have to wonder who I was. My memories were coming back. He turned to Michael, tears streaming down his face. I could have found you when I was 14. We could have had a life together. We could have been brothers through everything, your career, my life, all of it. And they took that from us. Sarah stood and tried to approach her husband, but he backed away, needing space for his anger. I spent 50 years feeling broken, Marcus continued, his voice rising. 50 years thinking something was wrong with me, that my brain was damaged beyond repair, that I'd never know who I really was. And all that time my memories were there, right there, trying to surface. And you, he pointed at Dr. Gaines, you pushed them back down. I know, and there's no forgiveness adequate for what I did. I was wrong. Dr. Hartwell was wrong. We played God with your mind and you paid the price. Damn right I paid the price. Marcus was shaking now. My wife paid the price. My children grew up with a father who couldn't explain his own past. Michael paid the price, mourning me for decades. Everyone I could have loved, everyone who could have loved me, we all paid for your arrogance. The room fell silent. Marcus stood by the window, his back to everyone, shoulders heaving. Dr. Gaines spoke quietly. I have terminal cancer, 6 months, maybe less. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because I want you to know that I'll face whatever consequences you decide. Legal action, public exposure, anything. I'll testify. I'll take responsibility. I'll spend whatever time I have left trying to make this right. You can't make it right, Marcus said without turning around. You can't give me back 40 years. You can't undo the damage. No, I can't, but I can give you the truth. I can give you these. Dr. Gaines placed the folder on the coffee table. Your real medical records, documentation of every memory fragment you had, proof that you were trying to find yourself, that your brain was fighting to heal, proof that the failure wasn't yours, it was ours. Marcus turned slowly. He looked at the folder like it was a bomb. Those are my memories from 1975. Yes, every fragment you mentioned, every question you asked, every time you tried to understand who you were. Dr. Gaines stood. I'll leave them with you. Read them, process them, and when you're ready, if you're ready, decide what you want to do next. He walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Marcus, you were an extraordinary patient. Even at 14, even with everything taken from you, you had this strength, this determination. You survived trauma that should have destroyed you, and you built a life. That wasn't despite the amnesia, that was because of who you are. They couldn't take that from you. We couldn't take that from you. Marcus said nothing as Dr. Gaines left. The silence after the doctor's departure was suffocating. Sarah stood and went to Marcus, wrapping her arms around him from behind. He stood rigid for a moment, then collapsed into her embrace, sobbing. Michael gave them space, stepping out onto the patio. He heard Marcus's broken cries through the window, 40 years of pain and confusion and stolen memories pouring out. After 20 minutes, Sarah came out to the patio. "How is he?" Michael asked. "Devastated, angry, grieving." Sarah wiped her eyes. "But also relieved, I think. He's blamed himself for so long. Why couldn't he remember? What was wrong with his brain? Now he knows it wasn't his fault. His brain was working. They just convinced him not to trust it." "What do? We let him process, we support him, and we help him decide what comes next." Sarah looked back through the window at her husband, now sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. "He'll want revenge. He'll want justice. But eventually, he'll realize that the best revenge is the life he's building now." Michael wasn't so sure. He knew the rage of injustice, the burn of being wronged. And Marcus had been wronged more deeply than most people could imagine. 3 days later. Marcus barely spoke for 3 days. He read through the medical records over and over, examining each fragment, each stolen memory. Sarah stayed close, and Michael gave him space while remaining available. On the third evening, Marcus knocked on Michael's study door. "Can we talk?" "Of course." Michael set down the book he'd been pretending to read. Marcus sat heavily in the chair across from Michael's desk. He looked exhausted, aged, as if reliving 1975 had physically drained him. "I've been thinking," Marcus said, "about Dr. Gaines, about what they did to me, about 40 years lost." "What have you decided?" "That I'm furious, that what they did was unforgivable, that I'll carry this anger for the rest of my life." Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless. "But I've also decided that anger can't be what defines me. Not anymore. I spent 40 years defined by what I didn't know. I won't spend the rest of my life defined by what was done to me." Michael leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not pursuing legal action. Dr. Hartwell is dead. Dr. Gaines is dying. The hospital system that failed me has changed completely in 40 years. Who would I even sue? And for what? Money won't give me back time." "You have every right to justice." "Maybe, but I've decided I want something else more." Marcus met Michael's eyes. "I want the press conference. I want to tell our story, the complete story, including what the doctors did. I want people to know that the medical system can fail patients, that doctors can make terrible choices, that people in power can steal from the powerless. But I also want people to know that you can survive even that. You can overcome even medical malpractice and arrogance and 40 years of lies." Michael felt something shift in his chest. "You want to turn this into a warning and a message of hope." "Exactly. The Marcus Webb Foundation needs to do more than reunite families. It needs to advocate for patients with memory issues. It needs to fund research into trauma recovery. It needs to make sure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else." "That's a bigger mission. It'll require more funding, more work." "Then we'll do more work," Marcus said firmly. "Michael, you asked me once if I thought there was a point to all the pain. I said I didn't know. But maybe this is the point. Maybe I went through 40 years of hell so that I could stand up and say, this happens, it's wrong, and we're going to fix it." Michael came around the desk and pulled Marcus into a hug. "You're remarkable, you know that. Most people would want revenge. You want reform." "I want both," Marcus admitted. "But I'll settle for making sure no other kid gets told their memories are just dreams. That feels like the revenge that matters." 2 weeks later, the press conference. The conference room at the Charlotte Convention Center was packed. Every major news outlet had sent reporters. Cameras lined the back wall. Photographers jostled for position. Michael sat at a table on the raised platform, Marcus on his left, Sarah on Marcus's left. Dr. Robert Gaines sat at the far end. Marcus had insisted he be present, wanted him to face the cameras, wanted the truth told completely. Monica stood at the podium. Thank you all for coming. Today, Mr. Jordan and Mr. Webb will share a story that spans 50 years. It's a story of friendship, loss, medical malpractice, and miraculous reunion. They'll take questions afterward, but first, they'd like to make a statement. Michael took the podium first. He told the story of meeting Marcus in 1971, the oak tree, the promise, the fadeaway jumper, the last game under the streetlight, the letters that came back unanswered, the rumor of Marcus's death, the 40 years of grief and searching. Then Marcus took the podium. He told his story, the accident, the coma, the amnesia, the foster care system, building a life from nothing, the dreams he couldn't understand, the feeling of incompleteness. The documentary that triggered everything, finding the oak tree, finding Michael. Then he paused and looked directly at the cameras. But there's something else you need to know, something that happened to me that shouldn't happen to anyone. He told them about Dr. Gaines and Dr. Hartwell, about the memory fragments that were dismissed, about the returning memories that were denied, about the 14-year-old boy who was convinced his own mind was lying to him. The room erupted in murmurs. Reporters started shouting questions. Cameras flashed. Marcus raised his hand for quiet. Dr. Robert Gaines is here today. He came forward voluntarily. He's told me the complete truth. And while what he and Dr. Hartwell did was wrong, unforgivably wrong, he's here to take responsibility, to face the consequences, to help make sure this never happens again. He gestured to Dr. Gaines, who stood shakily. The doctor looked 20 years older than he had 2 weeks ago, the weight of public exposure clearly taking its toll. I have no excuse for what I did, Dr. Gaines said into the microphone someone thrust at him. I convinced myself I was protecting a young patient. In reality, I was playing God with his mind and his life. Marcus Webb lost 40 years because of my arrogance. For that, there is no adequate apology. I can only work now to ensure no other patient suffers the same fate. Michael returned to the podium. This is why we're announcing the Marcus Webb Foundation. Its mission is threefold: reuniting families separated by tragedy and system failures, supporting youth in foster care, and advocating for patients with memory trauma. We'll be funding research, training medical professionals, and pushing for policy changes that protect vulnerable patients from being dismissed or misled about their own memories. He announced the funding, $50 million of his own money to start, with more to come. He announced the board of directors, leaders in medicine, psychology, foster care, and family services. He announced partnerships with major hospitals and universities. But more than that, Michael said, his voice breaking, this foundation is about hope. It's about the truth that even when life takes everything from you, your memories, your family, your past, you can still find your way home. Marcus found me after 40 years. Other families can find each other too. Other patients can get the care they deserve. Other children in foster care can get the support they need. He looked at Marcus, who stood and joined him at the podium. We were supposed to make the NBA together, Marcus said. We were supposed to be teammates, brothers, champions side by side. Life had other plans, but standing here today, I realize we are teammates. We are brothers, and we're about to start the most important game of our lives, helping others survive what we survived. Michael put his arm around Marcus's shoulders. This is my oldest friend. This is the man who taught me basketball when we were 10 years old. This is the man who believed in me before anyone else did. This is the man who survived the impossible and found his way back. And this is the man whose name will help save thousands of lives. The room exploded with applause. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters stood, moved by the story despite their professional cynicism. Questions came rapid fire. Marcus, will you sue the hospital? No, I want reform, not revenge. Dr. Gaines, do you expect criminal charges? I'll accept whatever consequences come. I deserve them. Michael, why are you doing this? You could have kept Marcus's return private. Because our story can help people. Because hope matters. Because nobody should suffer alone when they don't have to. Marcus, what would you say to the 14-year-old version of yourself? Marcus paused, tears filling his eyes. I'd say, hold on, keep fighting. The dreams are real. The memories matter. And one day you'll find your way home. One day you'll stand on a stage with your best friend and turn your pain into purpose. One day you'll be whole again. The press conference lasted 2 hours. When it finally ended, Michael and Marcus stood together, watching the reporters file out, feeling the weight of what they'd just done. "The world knows now," Marcus said quietly. "Our story is out there." "How do you feel?" "Terrified, relieved, angry, hopeful, all of it at once." Marcus turned to Michael. "But mostly I feel grateful. Grateful that I found you. Grateful that we can do this together. Grateful that our pain might save someone else from the same fate." Michael pulled him into a hug, one of dozens they'd shared in recent weeks, but somehow this one felt different. Final, complete. "Your reaction really was priceless," Marcus said with a watery laugh, pulling back. "When I showed up at your door, the look on your face, I'll never forget it." "You want to know what I was thinking in that moment?" "What?" "I was thinking my brother came home. After 40 years of being lost, my brother found his way home." Michael's voice was fierce. "And I was thinking, I'm never letting him go again. Whatever it takes, however long we have left, we're spending it together." "Brothers forever," Marcus said. "NBA dreams together," Michael finished. "We did it, Marcus. Not the way we planned, but we did it." They stood together on the stage, the cameras finally off, the reporters finally gone, just two old friends who had found each other against impossible odds. The game wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The foundation would take years to build. The work would be hard. The mission would be challenging, but standing together, they knew they could handle anything, because they were home. They were brothers, and they had the rest of their lives to make up for the 40 years they'd lost. The ending was priceless. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And after everything they'd survived, real was more than enough. 1 year later, April 2025. The morning sun cast golden light across the new Marcus Webb Foundation headquarters in Charlotte. The building wasn't large or ostentatious. Marcus had insisted on that. "We're helping people, not impressing them," he'd said during the design phase. So they'd chosen a modest 3-story building with large windows, comfortable offices, and a community space on the ground floor. Michael stood in the lobby, looking at the wall of photographs. Center stage was the image that had gone viral after the press conference. Him and Marcus embracing on stage, tears streaming down both their faces, the caption reading, "Brothers Forever 53 years later." But it was the other photos that made Michael's chest tighten with pride. There was Maria Santos, age 16, reunited with her grandmother after being separated for 8 years by a clerical error in the foster system. The foundation's investigators had tracked down her grandmother in Puerto Rico, verified the relationship, and funded the reunion. There was David Chen, age 23, who'd survived a car accident similar to Marcus's at age 15. With memory trauma therapy funded by the foundation, he'd recovered enough memory to identify his family and reconnect with them after years apart. There was the Johnson family, 3 siblings separated into different foster homes in 2019, now back together thanks to the Foundation's Family Reunification Program. 127 families reunited in the first year. Over 2,000 children in foster care receiving enhanced support services. 15 hospitals implementing new protocols for patients with memory trauma. 3 states passing legislation protecting patients from being dismissed about their own memories. The numbers were impressive, but it was the faces that mattered, each one a Marcus Webb who'd found their way home. "You're here early." Michael turned to see Marcus walking through the lobby, 2 cups of coffee in hand. In the year since their reunion, Marcus had aged backward. The lines around his eyes had softened, his posture had straightened, his smile came easier. He looked like a man who'd finally laid down a burden he'd carried too long. "Couldn't sleep," Michael admitted, taking the offered coffee. "Big day." "The biggest," Marcus agreed. Today was the 1-year anniversary of the press conference. Today they were unveiling the expansion of the Foundation's mission. And today they were inducting the first class of Marcus Webb Scholars, 10 young people from foster care receiving full college scholarships and mentorship. "Nervous?" Michael asked. "Terrified. You?" "Same," Michael gestured to the photo wall. "But then I look at this and remember why we're doing it." Marcus stood beside him, studying the faces. "You know what gets me? Every single one of these reunions, it's our story. Different details, different trauma, but the same core. people separated by tragedy and system failures finding their way back to each other. We're not alone, we never were. No, but we had something most of them didn't: each other. Someone who never stopped believing, never stopped searching. Marcus's voice was thick. That's what Sarah said to me last night. She said the real miracle isn't that I survived or even that I found you. The real miracle is that you never let me be forgotten. You carried me for 40 years. Michael felt tears prick his eyes. You would have done the same for me. I would have, but I didn't have to. You did it for both of us. They stood in comfortable silence, shoulder to shoulder, the way they'd stood as boys under a streetlight in Wilmington. The ceremony began at 10 o'clock. The community space was packed. Foundation staff, donors, board members, press, and most importantly, the families they'd helped. Every chair was filled, people stood along the walls, and the energy was electric. Michael welcomed everyone, his voice steady despite his nerves. A year ago, Marcus and I stood on a stage and told you a story about two boys who made a promise under an oak tree. We told you about loss and survival and miraculous reunion. Today, I want to tell you what happened next. He outlined the foundation's first year. The families reunited, the children supported, the policies changed. Each statistic represented real people, real transformations, real hope restored. But numbers don't capture what this really means, Michael continued. So I want to introduce you to some of the people behind those numbers. One by one, families took the stage. They told their stories of separation, of searching, of the foundation finding them when they'd given up hope. They cried, they laughed, they held each other tight. The audience cried with them. Then came the Marcus Webb Scholars. 10 young people ages 18 to 21, all from foster care backgrounds, all selected for their resilience, determination, and potential. Marcus stood at the podium to introduce them, and Michael saw his hands shaking. I was 14 when I lost everything, Marcus began. My parents, my memories, my past, my future, all gone in an instant. The foster care system did its best, but it wasn't enough. I fell through the cracks. I survived, but I didn't thrive, not for a long time. He looked out at the 10 young people sitting in the front row. These 10 scholars, they're not falling through cracks. They're climbing over them. They're taking their trauma and turning it into fuel. They're everything I was and everything I wish I'd had support to become earlier. He introduced each scholar by name, sharing a bit of their story. Angela Rodriguez, who'd been in 7 foster homes and was headed to MIT to study engineering. Jamal Washington, who'd aged out of foster care at 18 and was now pursuing pre-med at Howard University. Keisha Brown, a poet and activist heading to Columbia to study social justice. Each scholar stood when introduced, and the audience gave standing ovations. These kids weren't victims, they were warriors. The Marcus Webb Scholarship isn't just money for college, Marcus explained. It's mentorship, it's therapy, it's a support network. It's everything I didn't have but wish I did. And it's our promise to you, he looked at the scholars, that you're not alone, that your past doesn't define your future, that someone believes in you. Marcus's voice broke. Michael stood and walked to the podium, putting his hand on his friend's shoulder. What Marcus is trying to say, Michael continued, is that we see you. We know the fight you fought. We know the nights you cried yourself to sleep wondering if anyone cared. We know the feeling of being lost in a system that doesn't have time to see you as a person. And we're telling you we care, we see you, and we're here. The scholars stood and applauded. Then the entire room stood. The ovation lasted 5 minutes. After the ceremony, Michael found Marcus in his office, staring out the window at the street below. You okay? Better than okay, Marcus said, but his voice was rough. I keep thinking about 14-year-old me, lying in that hospital bed, confused and scared, being told my memories weren't real, accepting that I'd never know who I was. What do you want to tell him? Marcus turned, tears streaming down his face. I want to tell him it gets better, that the pain isn't forever, that one day he'll stand in an office building with his name on it, surrounded by people he's helping, with his best friend beside him. I want to tell him that surviving is enough, that he doesn't have to be Michael Jordan to matter, that Marcus Webb, just Marcus Webb, is enough. Michael crossed the room and pulled Marcus into a hug. You were always enough. I told you that when you were 11. I'm telling you now when you're 62. You were always enough, Marcus. They held each other, two old men who'd survived impossible things and found their way to purpose. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sarah entered, followed by Michael's daughter Jasmine and Marcus Jr. "Sorry to interrupt," Sarah said, "but there's someone downstairs asking to see you both, says it's important." "Who?" Marcus asked, wiping his face. "A woman named Patricia Wilson. Says you changed her life 20 years ago, Michael, and she wants to help the foundation." Michael's eyes widened. "Patricia Wilson, I remember her. She was a kid in Chicago, maybe 12 years old. I did a basketball clinic at her school. She said she wanted to go to college, but her family couldn't afford it. He trailed off, remembering. "I set up a scholarship for her, paid for her entire education. I'd forgotten about it." "She didn't forget," Sarah said with a smile. "She's downstairs with a check for $1 million. She's a doctor now. Says you changed the trajectory of her life and she wants to do the same for these kids." Marcus laughed, a joyful, incredulous sound. "That's what we've started, Michael, a chain reaction of hope." They went downstairs together, and Michael found himself facing a confident woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a grateful smile. "Mr. Jordan, I don't know if you remember me." "I remember," Michael said. "South side of Chicago, 1995. You wanted to be a doctor. You made it possible. Your scholarship, your belief in me, it changed everything. I'm a pediatrician now, working with underserved communities. And when I saw what you and Mr. Webb are doing," she turned to Marcus, "I knew I had to help. This check is just the beginning. I want to be involved however I can." Marcus shook her hand. "Thank you. Stories like yours, they remind us why we're doing this." "No," Patricia said firmly. "Stories like yours reminded me what's possible. You two found each other after 40 years. You turned trauma into purpose. You're proof that it's never too late to come home." That evening, Michael's basketball court. As the sun set, Michael and Marcus sat on the basketball court where they'd had so many conversations over the past year. Sarah had taken Marcus's grandchildren, who'd flown in for the ceremony, out for ice cream with Michael's grandchildren. The two old friends had the evening to themselves. "1 year," Marcus said, bouncing a basketball gently. "1 year since I knocked on your door." "Best year of my life," Michael said without hesitation. "Better than winning championships. Better than all of them combined. Those were moments. This is a lifetime." Marcus shot the ball. It arced through the air and swished through the net. "Still got it." "Your form is better. We've been practicing." They had been. 3 times a week they came out to this court and played gentle one-on-one, two old men with bad knees reliving their boyhood. The score never mattered. The game itself was the point. "I talked to Dr. Gaines yesterday," Marcus said, retrieving the ball. "His cancer has progressed. He's in hospice now." "How did that feel, talking to him?" "Complicated. I'm still angry about what he did, but I don't know, I think I forgive him. Not because he deserves it, but because carrying that anger was making me sick. He made a terrible choice. He's paying for it. And our foundation is making sure it never happens again. That feels like enough." "You're more generous than most people would be." "I learned from the best," Marcus said, looking at Michael. "You spent 40 years mourning me. You could have moved on, forgotten about the weird kid who lived next door for 2 years. But you didn't. You carried me. That kind of loyalty, that kind of love, it teaches you how to forgive." They played until the court lights came on automatically, until their knees ached and their breath came hard. Finally, exhausted and happy, they collapsed on the court side by side, looking up at the stars. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd never lost my memory?" Marcus asked. "If we'd stayed in touch, if we'd actually made it to the NBA together?" "Sometimes. But I think we ended up exactly where we were supposed to be. Even with 40 years lost." "Those years weren't lost," Michael said firmly. "They were just separate. You were building the strength to survive trauma. I was building the platform to help others. We needed to become these versions of ourselves before we could do this work together." Marcus considered this. "So you think the universe had a plan?" "I think we made a promise under an oak tree when we were 11. And somehow, despite everything that tried to break that promise, distance, tragedy, amnesia, time, we kept it. Brothers forever. NBA dreams together. We're living that promise right now. We never made it to the NBA together. Marcus, what we're doing with the foundation, that's bigger than the NBA. That's legacy. That's immortality. 100 years from now, people won't remember my fadeaway jumper, but they'll remember the families we brought back together, the children we saved, the hope we restored. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You really believe that? I know it, because that's what you did for me. When I was 10 years old and nobody believed in me, you did. That one act of belief changed my entire life. Now we're extending that belief to thousands of people. That matters more than any championship. They lay in comfortable silence, listening to crickets and distant traffic. Thank you, Marcus said softly. For what? For never forgetting me, for carrying me through 40 years, for making my survival mean something. Marcus's voice broke. For making me matter. You always mattered, Michael said fiercely. From the moment you showed me how to shoot a fadeaway, from the moment you carved that promise in the tree, from every moment in between, you've always mattered, Marcus Webb. You always will. Above them, stars wheeled across the Carolina sky. The same stars that had witnessed two boys making a promise, the same stars that had watched over decades of separation, the same stars that now looked down on a promise kept. 6 months later, October 2025. Michael stood in front of the oak tree in Wilmington. The property owners had agreed to preserve it, and the foundation had placed a bronze plaque at its base. In memory of a promise made and kept. Marcus Webb and Michael Jordan brothers, forever, NBA dreams together, 1972. Forever. Today was special. The foundation was dedicating a new youth center in Wilmington, a place where kids could play basketball, get tutoring, receive counseling, find community. It was built on the lot where Michael's old house had stood. Marcus stood beside him, along with 50 kids from the center, all from foster care or challenging backgrounds, all being given the chance Michael and Marcus wished they'd had. This tree saw the beginning of our story, Michael told the kids. 2 boys not much younger than you carved a promise into this bark. We promised to be brothers, to chase our dreams together. Life took us apart for 40 years, but the promise held. And now we're keeping that promise by making sure you have what we didn't: support, resources, belief. One of the kids, a 10-year-old boy named Tyler, raised his hand. Mr. Jordan, what do you want us to promise? Michael looked at Marcus, who smiled and nodded. I want you to promise to believe in yourselves, Michael said. Even when life is hard, even when people tell you that you can't make it, even when you feel alone and scared, believe that you matter. Believe that your dreams are valid. Believe that someone, even if it's just us, believes in you. And promise to help someone else when you can, Marcus added. The way Michael helped me, the way we're trying to help you, pass it forward. That's how we change the world, one promise, one person, one act of belief at a time. The kids gathered around the tree, touching the carved words, feeling the history. Tyler looked up at Marcus. Mr. Webb, are you glad it happened the way it did, even with all the bad stuff? Marcus knelt down to the boy's level. That's a hard question. I'm not glad I lost 40 years. I'm not glad I suffered, but I'm glad I found my way home. I'm glad that suffering gave me the strength to help others. And I'm glad that, standing here with you, I can tell you that no matter what you've been through, you can find your way home too. How do you know? Because I did it, because Michael never stopped believing, and because you're standing here right now being given a chance. That's how I know you're already on your way home. You just don't realize it yet. Present day, December 2025. The Marcus Webb Foundation's second annual gala was held in Chicago, fitting, since that was where Marcus had lost everything, and in a way, where he'd begun the long journey back. The ballroom was filled with donors, celebrities, politicians, and most importantly, the families the foundation had helped. 250 families reunited in year 2. Over 5,000 children receiving support. 23 hospitals implementing new memory trauma protocols. 8 states with new patient protection legislation. The numbers kept growing. The impact kept expanding. The promise kept delivering. Michael stood at the podium for his speech, Marcus beside him as always. 2 years ago, Michael began, a man knocked on my door. I thought he was dead. I'd mourned him for 40 years. But there he stood, weathered, aged, but unmistakably alive. And in that moment, my entire world changed. He looked at Marcus. This man, my brother, my first believer, my oldest friend, he taught me something when we were 11 years old. He taught me that the basket is just a detail. That greatness starts in your heart, not in your hands. That believing in someone can change their life. Michael's voice grew stronger. I spent 40 years trying to honor that lesson on basketball courts, but it wasn't until Marcus came back that I understood the real application. Believing in people, truly believing in them, supporting them, helping them find their way home, that's the real game. That's the game that matters. He gestured to the room. Every person in this room is playing that game now. Every donation, every volunteer hour, every family reunited, every child supported. You're all keeping the promise Marcus and I made under an oak tree in 1972. You're all proving that brothers and sisters can be forever. That dreams can come true, even if they take 50 years and look different than expected. The room erupted in applause. Marcus stood and hugged Michael, and cameras captured the moment. Two old friends, still honoring a childhood promise, still believing in each other, still changing lives. After the gala, Michael and Marcus stood on the hotel balcony, looking out at Chicago's skyline. This city had taken everything from Marcus once. Now it was celebrating him. Full circle, Marcus said quietly. The best kind, Michael agreed. You know what I think about sometimes? Marcus asked. I think about 11-year-old us carving that promise into the tree. If we could go back and tell them what was coming, the accident, the amnesia, the 40 years apart, would we still make the promise? Yes, Michael said without hesitation, because I'd tell them that the promise holds, that it survives tragedy and time, that they'll find each other again, and that when they do, they'll help thousands of people find each other too. I'd tell them the pain is worth it because the ending is beautiful. Is this the ending? Marcus asked. No, Michael smiled. This is the middle. We've got years left, more families to reunite, more kids to support, more promises to keep. Brothers forever. NBA dreams together, Michael finished. We made it, Marcus, both of us, just like we said we would. They stood together in the Chicago night, two old warriors who'd fought impossible battles and won, looking forward to the battles still to come. The promise carved in an oak tree in 1972 was more than kept. It was alive, growing, spreading hope to every person it touched. Michael Jordan's childhood friend had shown up at his door, and his reaction truly was priceless. Not the shock, not the tears, not the reunion, though all of that mattered. The priceless reaction was what came after. The decision to turn private joy into public good. The choice to transform tragedy into triumph. The commitment to make sure that what happened to them, both the beautiful and the terrible, helped others survive their own journeys home. That was the true victory. Not the reunion itself, but what they built with it. And standing on that balcony in Chicago, looking out at a city full of people finding their way home, Michael and Marcus knew their childhood promise had been more than kept. It had been multiplied. Magnified, made eternal, brothers forever, NBA dreams together. The dream had just changed shape, and it was more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. So that's the incredible story of Michael Jordan and Marcus Webb. Two boys who made a promise under an oak tree, got separated for 40 years and found each other again to change thousands of lives. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city and country in the comments below. I love seeing our community from all around the world. And if this story touched your heart, hit that like button. It really helps us spread these amazing stories of hope and kindness to more people who need to hear them. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible story like this one. And hey, the video appearing on your screen right now. It's another unbelievable true story that will blow your mind. Click on it and keep the inspiration going. Thanks for watching, and remember, just like Michael and Marcus showed us, it's never too late to find your way home. See you in the next video.